When she was found by the search and rescue team, Emily was completely starved, with sunken eyes, high cheekbones, and a deathly pale complexion. The team leader looked at the photo for a long time before using the walkie-talkie to inform Mr. Ethan that Emily had been found. Not long after, Ethan and Chloe arrived. Seeing Emily's paper-white face and excessively thin body, Ethan was first taken aback, and then became increasingly angry. Why couldn't she just stay put? Did she know that the search and rescue team hadn't slept for days trying to find her? Could she just not shake off this bad habit of creating trouble for others? Alau Mountain is shrouded in mist all year round, surrounded by wild animals. At first, Emily really didn't dare to go in even a step, only daring to stay where he was, eating the food in his backpack, waiting for Ethan to come and find him as soon as possible, to save him from this sea of suffering. But one day, when he woke up, he was horrified to find two wolf-like creatures not far away, licking his last remaining backpack, their eyes gleaming green, as if they would tear him apart and devour him in the next bite. Emily was so scared that he didn't even dare to breathe heavily, his fingernails digging into his palms, almost drawing blood. Fortunately, the wolves eventually left. Satiated, after losing all his food, he had no choice but to venture deeper into the mountains, facing Ethan Sanger. Emily just lowered his head, without any explanation. In the past, Ethan always complained that he talked too much and was unforgiving. Later, it gradually became that as long as it was Emily's explanation, his first reaction was to refuse to believe it, since that's the case. What was there for him to argue about? Emily was thinking about the search and rescue. Bored out of her mind, a young man on the team seemed to overhear and muttered in defense of her. Alau Mountain is known for its dangers, with wild animals frequently appearing. How could she, a girl, stay in the same place for a month? Do you and Emily know each other? Chloe's sudden question left the young man bewildered. No, I don't. Chloe covered her mouth and chuckled. Listening to you speak up for Emily like that, I thought you were old acquaintances. As she spoke, she looked meaningfully at Emily, her laughter growing crisper. Emily is still so likable. Even strangers who meet her for the first time rush to protect her. As soon as she finished speaking, Ethan's face darkened, but not towards the young man. Rather, he faced Emily. How is it that in such a short time, there's already a man standing up for you? You really have some impressive methods. The search and rescue captain quickly pulled the team back, lest someone else in the team, unaware of the situation, come out and add fuel to the fire. For a moment, the mountain forest was eerily silent. It was Chloe who broke the silence first, squatting down and asking, Emily, are you okay? Then she looked up at Ethan. What happened that day? Emily didn't do it on purpose. He was just spoiled since he was a child, and prejudiced against me. That's why he attacked me. Little brother, please don't blame him anymore. You see, I've only got a little injury on my leg, and it's been hurting for so long. Emily, a little girl, must be scared staying in the Alau Mountains. Let's take him back quickly. When he mentioned what happened that day, Ethan's tone was so cold it was like ice. You should be glad that Wanwan's leg is okay. Otherwise, even if you died, you wouldn't be able to compensate. I've already made arrangements. The wedding will be postponed for a year. Go back and explain it to Grandma yourself. The Chu and Nan families have been friends for generations. Grandma has always liked Emily very much since she was a child. 5 years ago, Emily's parents died unexpectedly, and Grandma directly took him to the Chu family. She publicly set the marriage between him and Ethan, and he did not refuse, but quietly blushed looking at the tall and handsome boy. Over the years, Emily has always regarded herself as Ethan's fiancée, not allowing any girls to get close to him. Once she found him getting close to any girl, she would throw tantrums and make unreasonable troubles. In the circle, she was nicknamed the skin-protecting tigress. Emily didn't care and continued to do her own thing. But no matter what he did, he couldn't resist the power of his dream girl returning to China. Because of Chloe, her wedding with Ethan had already been postponed once. That time, everyone in Jing City knew how angry he was, almost turning the place upside down. Even Grandma had secretly reminded him not to go too far. So when Ethan said it again, everyone present held their breath, afraid that she would cause trouble again. But Emily just lowered her eyes and said, Okay, I'll listen to you. Ethan was stunned for a long time. He thought Emily would definitely make a scene, and even prepared violent means to suppress him in advance. But seeing him agree so obediently, he felt a strange sense of unease and irritability, as if things were escaping his control, and subconsciously backed down. If you think the postponement is too long, you don't have to, Emily refused with a smile. Whether it was postponed for a year or 10 years, even cancelling it was no longer important to him. Ethan didn't know that he had made a deal with the mountain spirits. In 7 days, he would replace the spirits and marry another man. By then, he could postpone it as long as he liked, or change brides as he pleased, and it would all be irrelevant to him. Before leaving, the search and rescue team tried to help Emily up, only to discover to their surprise that he couldn't stand at all. After the food in his backpack had been completely scavenged, Emily had been starving for days. When he was dizzy with hunger, his survival instinct made him willing to risk climbing a tree more than 10 meters tall just to find something to eat. Fortunately, he succeeded in picking the fruit from the tree and ate it. Unfortunately, the fruit was poisonous. As soon as he ate it, he felt excruciating abdominal pain and fell directly from the tree. When he woke up, both of his legs were broken. The rescue team's temporary doctor couldn't handle such an injury at all and quickly contacted a nearby hospital in advance. "You're so badly injured, why didn't you tell me?" At that moment, Emily actually found it a bit funny. If he could have contacted the outside world, why would he have been trapped in this godforsaken place for a whole month? Ethan also realized the flaw in his words from his silence, and uncharacteristically lowered his head to him. "I'm sorry, leaving you here alone was inconsiderate of me. But don't worry, I will definitely heal your legs." Ethan was about to hug him, but Chloe behind him let out an exclamation at the right time. "Oh dear." Then, she staggered and fell down, subconsciously pushing Nanyuan away. Ethan hurriedly took Chloe into his arms, his eyes full of guilt and worry. "Chloe, how are you?" "I'm fine. My leg is just a little sore. I told you a long time ago that your leg isn't healed yet, so don't come along. But I'm worried about Emily." Chloe's eyes immediately turned red. "After all, I am also responsible for Emily being like this now." Emily was pushed into the bushes, her elbow seemingly cut by something, leaving a gash that hurt terribly. Ethan didn't even look at her, but picked up Chloe and ran out of the woods. Fortunately, the young men from the search and rescue team carried him to the nearest hospital. It can only be said that Ethan was confident too early. After a comprehensive assessment of Emily's injuries, the doctor delicately suggested that his leg might not be salvageable. Moreover, his organs were showing signs of failure to varying degrees, and his digestive tract had severely atrophied due to prolonged lack of nutrition, facing a risk of having 3/4 of his stomach removed. Hearing this, Ethan almost flipped the doctor's desk. "What do you mean not salvageable? How could it not be salvageable? Emily's leg is just a fracture, isn't it? How can you say he'll never stand up again?" Chloe quickly comforted Ethan, saying it's okay. "If the hospital here can't fix it, we'll go to the city, and if they can't fix it there, we can send him abroad. There will always be a way. Have you forgotten that my brother is a famous surgeon?" Ethan's brow was still furrowed, but his expression seemed a little more relaxed, unsure if he had really taken Chloe's words to heart or was just reassuring himself that there was always a way. There definitely would be a way. Emily was rushed to the best hospital in the city overnight, where Chloe's brother, Dr. Victor, personally attended to her and came to a completely opposite conclusion from the previous hospital. There was nothing seriously wrong with Emily's legs, and she would be fine after a couple of days of rest. As for organ failure, that was even more unfounded. It's written clearly in the books that a person can survive for at least 5 weeks without eating at all. I think Emily was just being too delicate, which led to the previous doctor's misdiagnosis. In his words, he portrayed Emily as a complete liar. Perhaps because the diagnoses were so different, Ethan looked a little complicated, and even asked uncertainly, "Really, of course, it's true." Chloe skillfully spoke in a soft and slightly reproachful tone. "Don't you trust my brother, really?" Shu Jinye also frowned. "It's been a month since Wanwan got injured, and her leg injury is still acting up. If I had known that being by your side would lead to a deliberate murder attempt, I would never have let her go out with you." This time Ethan completely believed it. And the look in his eyes towards Emily was filled with disappointment and anger. Chloe, on the other hand, tugged at her brother's sleeve and explained, "Although Emily pushed me, I believe she didn't do it on purpose. She just loves Xiaogij too much. That's why she did such a foolish thing. I don't blame him at all." No wonder your siblings. He and Xu Zhenye were both used to saying such upside-down words, which sounded like they were making excuses for someone. But in reality, they were splashing all the dirt on the other person. It was just like a month ago in the Alao Mountains, when he whispered in Emily's ear, "Your parents must have done too many bad things to die in the mountains. I heard their bodies were eaten by wild animals, and their deaths must have been terrible. I wonder what kind of heinous things they did." But before Emily could refute, he had already fallen down, his entire right leg covered in blood. Ethan immediately slapped Emily and left him in the Alao Mountains. "You're a lunatic. If anything happens to Wanwan, you'll stay here for the rest of your life." Emily cried and begged him not to do this. His parents had died in a wilderness expedition, and since then, he had been afraid of the outdoors, afraid of animals, and even more afraid of such gloomy primeval forests. If it weren't for being able to be with Ethan all the time, he would never have come here to explore. But now Ethan was going to leave him here to fend for himself. Emily trembled as he cried, his thumb tightly gripping the side of his middle finger. His voice changed as he begged, "Please don't do this to me. I swear, I won't dare anymore. I won't dare anymore. I won't follow you again. I'll run far away. Please don't leave me here." It's unknown which words angered Ethan, but the anger on his face grew even stronger. "Okay, Emily, you're really something." Emily was abandoned by the team. Left with nothing but a pack of food, thoughts returned. Emily found that her lips had been bitten until they bled, the stinging pain slowly spreading throughout her body. Ethan suddenly grabbed his hand. "Hurry up and apologize to Chloe." His force was too great, directly tearing open Emily's elbow wound again. Fresh blood dripping down her arm onto the white sheets. Like a beast opening its bloody maw, the memory of Alao Mountain flashed back, and Emily subconsciously flinched. But Ethan forcibly held her down. Following the flow of blood, he was surprised to find a wound over a dozen centimeters long on Emily's elbow. The flesh turned out, spewing blood. "Didn't you say you had carefully checked? How could Emily have such a large wound on her hand?" Ethan's expression changed suddenly. Glaring at Dr. Victor's face as if he wanted to devour him, Xu Zhenye stammered for a long time, unable to say a word. In reality, he didn't do any examination for Emily at all. He just locked Emily in the examination room, occasionally glancing at her with disgust. "He originally wanted to give you a full-body examination, but the greasy emphasis in his words made Emily feel disgusted. Looking at you now, neither human nor ghost. I can't be bothered to touch or even look at you. The situation is not good." Chloe hurriedly turned the spearhead back to Emily. "Emily, how did you suddenly get this wound on your hand? It couldn't be that you deliberately did it to reject the postponement of the wedding, right?" As she said this, she quietly gave Dr. Victor a look, and he immediately understood. "Yes, it wasn't there when I did the examination just now. You must have secretly taken my scalpel and cut yourself when I wasn't paying attention. A habitual liar. Hopeless." Ethan's voice was trembling with anger. "Emily, I'm telling you, you can postpone this wedding date whether you want to or not." The entire time Emily only defended herself once at the beginning. "I didn't." After being interrupted by Ethan's rebuke, she stopped speaking, watching quietly as if she no longer cared. When she heard the end, she even lowered her head and softly responded, "Okay," walking out of the ward. Ethan was still quite angry. Chloe smoothed his breathing and suggested, "I don't think Emily's temper will change anytime soon. Today she can do things to hurt herself. Who knows how willful she will be tomorrow." Ethan had obviously listened, his eyes dark, like black clouds over the city, seeing that it was Chloe who added the weight. "I don't think she's afraid of using the wedding postponement as a bargaining chip, so why not cancel the engagement with him first?" Almost without thinking, Ethan refused. "Why, with Emily's temper? If she knew I was going to cancel the engagement," as if imagining Emily's reaction, A hint of a very slight, indulgent smile tugged at the corner of Ethan's lips, and he subconsciously twisted the engagement ring on his ring finger. Wouldn't he raise hell? He is indeed willful and reckless. But our marriage contract was set long ago and cannot be cancelled. Didn't you say so? It takes drastic measures to cure his lawless behavior. I want to teach him a lesson, thinking of Emily's haggard face, her disfigured legs, and the deep, bone-deep wounds on her arms. Ethan felt a twinge of unbearable emotion in his heart, but he had already learned enough of a lesson. But it's all right now, Ethan interrupted Chloe directly, saying, I know what I'm doing, as he said this. The look in his eyes towards her was a little strange. Chloe immediately changed her tune. Little brother is right, I was overthinking it. Before Sai finished speaking, a look of pain appeared on his face. Was his leg starting to hurt again? Ethan, pretending to be anxious, scooped her up in his arms. Quick, get a doctor. Emily rested in the hospital for 2 days, and the nurse would apply medicine to his leg on time, but it was just some antibacterial and anti-inflammatory powder. The wound hadn't scabbed over yet, and applying this stuff often caused him excruciating pain. Therefore, despite the constant flow of medicinal tonics and Emily being hooked up to nutrient fluids day and night, he became even thinner, so fragile that he seemed like he would break with a pinch. When Ethan came in, he saw her in so much pain that she was covered in sweat, biting her lower lip to keep from crying out. Emily used to be so delicate, crying and fussing even from a tiny needle prick, needing him to coax her for a long time before she would calm down. How could she have changed so much in just a month? His heart clenched. Do you even know how to apply medicine? Ethan snatched the medicine from the nurse's hand, his tone frighteningly cold. The nurse apologized repeatedly. I'm sorry, Mr. Chu, I really didn't mean to. The medicine box fell to the ground with a crash, startling Emily. The nurse took the opportunity to slip out. Ethan held up the medicine bottle, a complex mix of emotions churning in his eyes. Finally, he sighed. Why don't you cry out when it hurts? Weren't you the one who loved to complain to me the most? He didn't say the second half of the sentence, waiting for Emily to show weakness and bow her head to him. He had already given her enough of a way out. Even the fact that Emily deliberately hurt Chloe, he could let bygones be bygones. Emily should admit her mistake even if she had to lower herself further. As long as she bowed her head and apologized to him, and then acted coquettishly and begged him, he could consider not postponing the wedding for a year, maybe half a year, maybe 3 months, or maybe as long as you realize your mistake and apologize properly to Chloe. I can forgive you too. After saying that, he confidently waited for Emily to speak, and Emily did apologize as he expected. I'm sorry, I apologize for the wrong things I did in the past. Regarding the postponement of the wedding, I will personally talk to Grandma. If you want, I can also take the initiative to propose the dissolution of the engagement, from beginning to end. His attitude was calm and sincere, but Ethan was so angry that his voice seemed to tremble. Listen to what you're saying. Do you know what you're saying? Just because I left you on Mount Ailau, you have to say such things to anger me. Do you really think I have to marry you? The barrage of questions gave Emily a headache. And he suddenly couldn't remember why he had fallen in love with such a stubborn and arrogant man. In the end, the conversation ended with Ethan storming out. Emily's hospitalization still reached Grandma, and on the 4th day after he was rescued from Mount Ailau, the old lady came to the hospital in person. Seeing Grandma, Emily first happily rushed into her arms, but then inexplicably shed tears of grievance. During the month in the Ailau Mountains, for the first few days, Emily kept thinking about when Ethan would come to pick him up. He would be obedient and never pester him again. Later, he gradually despaired. In the misty mountains and forests, the people he saw most often, besides his deceased parents, were this kind Grandma. She remembered that when her parents died, Grandma held her in her arms, comforting her again and again. When he had a high fever all night long because of fear, it was also Grandma who stayed by his bed, feeding him medicine and calling his name, Emily. The moment my Emily saw Emily's painful expression, the old lady was furious. My Emily is already so sick. And you're still giving her this kind of medicine. Are you a bunch of quacks trying to kill my Emily? Discharge. We're getting discharged right now. Grandma will take you to find the best doctor." Shu-Zhenye was so scared that his legs went weak, he could only call for Chloe to come while clinging to the doorframe, trying to appear calm. "Madam, I am the most famous surgical expert in the city. My diagnosis is never wrong. Emily is just too delicate, frankly. She's just putting on a show for you. In reality, there's nothing wrong with her. Why are you making such a fuss?" Although the old lady doesn't participate in business matters, she has been immersed in the enormous Chu family for decades, and her demeanor is unmatched by ordinary people. With a strike of her dragon-headed cane, Dr. Victor was beaten, screaming and scurrying away while holding his head. The old lady didn't mince words and immediately called her men in, ready to carry Emily out. Chloe rushed in, wondering why the old lady was suddenly so angry. "Did Emily say something to you?" Although he kept his head down, the look he gave Emily was venomous. "Emily has always been prejudiced against me, and she even resents my brother and you, old lady." You slapped Chloe across the face with a loud crack. "What kind of person are you? Huai Xiao doesn't know. Do you think I'm blind too? You know in your heart how much the Chu family spent to get your brother the position of director of surgery. Huai Xiao is blind to see you as a treasure. I can't discipline him. But do you think I can't touch you?" The old lady did it herself. Naturally no one dared to stop her. Even Shu-Zhenye only cowered in the corner, not daring to breathe loudly, with each slap. Chloe's face quickly became swollen and red. The old lady was still not appeased and kicked Chloe in the chest. Chloe should have fallen, but Ethan, who had just arrived, caught her in his arms. Chloe was crying with tears all over her face, struggling to cover her cheeks full of fingerprints, her voice trembling. "Brother, I don't know what Emily said to the old lady. If he really can't tolerate me, then I'll stay far away and never get in your way. But can you please ask him to be merciful and stop targeting me?" Looking at the mess in the room, the old lady's raised hand was still in the air. Ethan, his face pale, firmly protected Chloe beneath him. "What is he? What right does he have to not accept you? You will stay by my side. And you are not allowed to go anywhere." With that, his gaze, like that of an enemy, stared fixedly at Emily on the hospital bed. "Do you love to stir up trouble so much? Fine. Don't you want to call off the engagement?" He took off the ring on his left ring finger and threw it forcefully out the window. "Then let's call it off." Grandma was so angry that she fainted on the spot. The hospital room was in chaos. Emily wanted to help her up, but she fell off the bed. The foredrip was torn off, and medicine spilled all over the floor. Her bandaged legs were seeping with patches of blood. "Grandma, Grandma!" She used her last two hands to crawl forward, each step extremely laborious, but just as she was about to touch Grandma's hand, she was stopped by Ethan. "What else do you want to do? I just want to see if Grandma is okay." Emily humbly lay in front of Ethan, grabbing the other person's trouser leg, trying to get a trace of pity so that he could see how Grandma was, but Ethan directly kicked away her hand. "Stop pretending. If it weren't for you, would Grandma be so angry? How old is Grandma? Don't you consider her health at all?" "Emily, how could you be so vicious?" Saying that, he hugged Su Wanwan and left straight away. Before leaving, Chloe, who was hiding in his arms, looked at Emily, who couldn't even crawl, with an extremely smug look, and mouthed two words: "You deserve it." Grandma was in a coma for 2 full days. Mr. Richard and Mrs. Catherine rushed over overnight, so angry that Mr. Richard slapped Ethan across the face right then and there, asking how he was taking care of his grandmother. And what would happen to the Chu family's reputation if the media outside got wind of it? Mr. Richard was clearly very angry, and the slap was not light. Soon, a bright red handprint was left on Ethan's face. Mrs. Catherine felt sorry for her son and quickly comforted her husband, winking at her son. She then asked what exactly happened and how the old lady could have suddenly fainted. Getting her words in first, "Emily caused some trouble a while ago, and her little brother gave her a small punishment." Who knew that Emily would actually complain to the old lady? She didn't know what he said to the old lady, but it actually made the old lady so angry that she fainted, explaining in a way that downplayed her own involvement and easily put all the blame on Emily. Mrs. Catherine frowned upon hearing this. This Emily is truly clueless. It was one thing when her parents were around, But what does the Nan family have left now? Hasn't it all been divided up by her uncles? If it weren't for our Chu family, she would have become an orphan long ago. How dare she be so reckless? Ethan, although still angry, couldn't help but defend Emily when he heard his mother belittling her like this. Mom, Uncle Nan helped us a lot in the past. If it weren't for the Nan family's funds, we probably would have been in a better situation. Let's not talk about the past anymore. Mr. Richard interrupted Chu Huai. Xiao Yi glanced meaningfully at Xu Wanwan beside him and said sternly, I heard you mentioned breaking off the engagement with Emily. Ethan didn't respond, but Mrs. Catherine grumbled, it's good to break it off. Besides her face, what else does she have, relying on the old lady's love? She is spoiled, doesn't know how to advance or retreat, and wants to fight for it. Who knows what kind of trouble she'll cause once she's married into the family? Ethan subconsciously wanted to refuse. Even though he lost the engagement ring and said harsh words, he never really wanted to call off the engagement with Emily from the bottom of his heart. Chloe quickly held his hand, whispering, Uncle and Aunt are angry, don't upset them. Then, she smiled at Mrs. Catherine. The matter of breaking off the engagement isn't urgent, it's just that the old lady's health can't take any more. So why not send Emily abroad first, and then we can discuss it in detail after the old lady recovers. Okay, that's settled. After Mr. Richard and Mrs. Catherine left, Ethan finally sighed deeply, took Chloe's hand in his and said, Thank you, otherwise, Mr. Richard might have forced Ethan and Emily to break off the engagement in his anger. If that were the case, he would really be in a dilemma. Chloe smiled understandingly. There's no need to thank me. Emily treats you like that, and you still help her. Emily just has a childish temper. Would I really hold it against her? After comforting Ethan, Chloe finally had time to visit her brother, who had almost had a rib broken. Dr. Victor winced in pain while applying the medicine, not forgetting to complain. Why did you have to make such a fuss and attract that old hag? Chloe looked at him with disappointment and sighed. How long do you think you can hide Emily's injuries? If he really dies at your hands, do you think Ethan will let you off? Not only will you lose your position as the director of surgery, but you won't even be able to save your own life. Xu Zhenye immediately became anxious. It was you who asked me to conceal Emily's condition in the first place. You can't just abandon me. That's why I tried everything to set up this scheme, just to send Emily abroad, once he has an accident abroad. No one can blame us. Only when he dies can the little brother's bride be rightfully replaced. The departure date was set for 2 days later. In these 2 days, Emily was kept alone in the ward, with nurses and bodyguards guarding inside and outside the ward every day, as if afraid that he would run out and cause trouble again. But he couldn't even stand up. Ethan had doubts, but Xu Zhenye covered them up. Emily's legs were actually healed a long time ago, but he refused to stand up. And there was nothing I could do. Once he is sent abroad, he won't be able to play the victim in front of you anymore, and maybe he will be able to stand up. Ethan's face darkened again. It seemed that the month in the Alao Mountains the time before last hadn't taught her a lesson. He didn't understand why Emily was always so willful, now even using her own body as a bargaining chip to threaten him. But he couldn't help feeling a secret delight at Emily's concern for him. However, Emily didn't show the panicked look he had expected. She just asked, How is Grandma? You dare mention Grandma? Ethan was even more infuriated. If she hadn't complained about him in front of Grandma, making her rush over from so far away, how could she have fainted? It wasn't me, Emily retorted softly. What? Ethan heard her, but he refused to believe it. He never believed her anyway, Emily thought to herself, closing her eyes again. 2 days later would be the day he left forever. Maybe he wanted her to stay abroad forever. All of Emily's things had been packed up and sent over, clothes, jewelry, and mostly the paintings she had made for Ethan. After being brought to the Chu family, he was always unhappy at first. Although Grandma would comfort him, she was, after all, an old woman, and there were times when she couldn't do everything she wanted to, so Grandma had Ethan accompany him. Ethan would hold his hand and walk out of the house, take him to see the fireworks all over the city, and gently wipe away the tears from his face when he missed his mom and dad. Don't worry, I will always be with you. Emily started secretly recording Ethan's every move, front view, side view, head down with a smile, preserving them in his heart and drawing them on paper. Especially on their engagement day, Emily felt truly alive. As if there was finally someone in the world who would never leave him, so he spent a month specially drawing a picture of him and Ethan kissing. But before he could give the painting away, Chloe got off the plane. That was the first time Ethan voluntarily let go of his hand. "Emily, be good. I'll go pick someone up and be right back." But Ethan didn't return until late at night. It was also from that day on that Ethan never called him Emily again, but instead called him by his full name. Emily. His words could not be sent out, but his heart could not be taken back. It was not until he ate the poisonous flesh of the red fruit in the Alau Mountains, a single bite of which broke his heart and liver, that he knew he was going to die. Before his death, the obsessions of the past cycled back and forth, eventually turning into dust. It was from that moment that he completely gave up. If he couldn't take back his heart, then he didn't want it, just like he didn't want Ethan either. As he lay dying, a voice suddenly echoed in his ear, "Do you want to live? I can make a deal with you." In a daze, he heard himself ask, "What deal?" The spirit had no physical voice, yet it carried a fragile beauty. "I can use my remaining spiritual power to help you live, but after you leave here, your soul needs to enter my body and fulfill my unfinished wish for me." "What is your wish?" "To marry Christopher, and be with him forever." "Why don't you go back then?" Wang Lin seemed to chuckle softly, but the sound was more painful than crying. "I've been drifting here for 3 years, and even if I get out, I'll only dissipate. You're my only hope." "All right, I agree to make a deal with you." The sunlight outside the window suddenly stung Emily's eyes. The airport baggage handler on the other end of the phone asked, "Emily, the list of checked baggage has been sent. Please check it to see if anything is missing." "No need," Emily said. "Just throw it all away for me." "I don't want it." "What do you not want?" Ethan suddenly walked in, asking with a somewhat hesitant expression. Emily hung up the phone, only glanced at him, and shook her head slightly. "A few old clothes." Seeing her indifferent look, Ethan felt uncomfortable, but he couldn't bring himself to apologize. And his tone became strange. "Sending you abroad is for you to reflect properly, so you don't cause trouble all day long." Emily nodded obediently. "I'm sorry, I won't do it again." Seeing her finally listening, Ethan felt even more uneasy, as if something was slipping out of his control. "Okay, the car is waiting downstairs." Chloe walked in from outside the door, intimately taking Ethan's arm, looking as natural as the sweetest lovers, if it were before, seeing them so close. Emily would have gone crazy and rushed up to pull them apart, but today, Emily just watched quietly, the corners of her mouth even slightly raised in a relieved smile. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "You guys go ahead, I'll be down in a bit." After speaking, Emily turned her head and stopped looking at them. Emily must be acting up again. Chloe covered her mouth and chuckled, the corner of her eye watching Ethan's every move, until she saw him breathe a sigh of relief. Then she pulled him out of the hospital room. "Even though it's abroad, it's just a matter of tens of thousands of kilometers. If you want to see Emily, you can fly over anytime, or bring him back." Chloe smiled gently. "If he can't change his temper, then he should never come back." Ethan was still upset by Emily's cold behavior just now. He should have begged him. As long as he acted cute and said he would change, he didn't necessarily want him to go to such a faraway place. After all, he was still young and spoiled. He would definitely be scared to live alone abroad. A gasp interrupted Ethan's thoughts. When he turned around to look, Emily was sitting on the windowsill on the 3rd floor. Her legs dangling weakly, like autumn leaves, ready to be blown down by the wind at any moment. At that moment, Ethan couldn't even breathe. He the hand of the person next to him and ran desperately towards Emily. "Emily, what are you doing? Don't be willful. We can talk about anything. Please don't." However, before he could finish speaking, Emily jumped from the windowsill. A white figure fell to the ground like a bird with broken wings. At that moment, Ethan felt like his heart was about to stop beating. His whole body, including his brain, couldn't function properly. His only thought was to catch Emily's body. He reacted faster than his brain, running desperately to the window, trying to reach out and catch the white figure. Fortunately, he did catch her. But unfortunately, the third floor was too high, Emily's falling speed was also too fast, so even though he caught her, it only gave Emily's body a little cushioning force. So that she didn't end up landing on the ground, but on the lawn. As a price, both of Ethan's arms were twisted into terrifying postures. All the doctors in the hospital rushed down, some carrying stretchers, some stopping the bleeding, some performing CPR. Even Chloe, who didn't know anything about medicine, ran forward anxiously, wanting to help in any way she could. Only Dr. Victor, the most authoritative director of surgery in the hospital, stood there blankly, not daring to move at all. All the doctors were already used to this situation. Who didn't know that Dr. Victor's title as director was bought with money by the Chu family? Asking him to save someone at this time would be no different than committing a crime in the street. A large group of medical staff brought the two injured patients into the operating room. Upon hearing the news, Mr. Richard and Mrs. Catherine hurriedly contacted the best doctors in the country to come and assist. The operating room lights stayed on for a full 48 hours, with new doctors constantly rushing in to take over, and a steady stream of bloody gauze being sent out. Even Grandma, who was still recuperating in the hospital, was alarmed and insisted on sitting in a wheelchair to guard the door of the operating room. He knew very well that if he didn't come, Ethan might be pushed out alive, but Emily might not. After such a thing happened, none of the Nan family members showed up, not even a word of condolence, let alone Mr. Richard and Mrs. Catherine caring much. Finally, in the early hours of the third day, Ethan was the first to be pushed out. With complete vital signs and both hands barely saved, however, it was unlikely that he would be like a normal person. Upon hearing this, Mrs. Catherine, perhaps out of excitement, fainted. Grandma quickly pulled the doctor and asked, "What about Emily? How is my Emily?" The doctor sighed, "The situation is not optimistic. The family should be prepared that the patient may never wake up." Grandma almost fainted as well. 2 days later, Ethan finally woke up. The first thing he did upon waking was to ask the nurse beside him how Emily was doing. The nurse hesitated, afraid to speak. That day, Emily chose to jump from the third-floor ward. And Ethan rushed to catch her without a second thought. The story had already spread throughout the hospital, and she was really worried that if she said anything, it would lead to serious consequences. The nurse's hesitant expression in Ethan's eyes caused his heart to ache uncontrollably. "Emily, my Emily." Despite having both hands in casts, he still managed to break the 4 line with amazing willpower, got out of bed, and ran out of the ward. He searched room by room. But he couldn't find Emily anywhere. The interfaces on his arms burst open from excessive force, bulging outwards and oozing blood, staining the gauze red before dripping onto the floor. 1 drop, 2 drops, 3 drops. Finally, Ethan's face turned pale, and he almost fainted. But he still stubbornly clung to the wall, refusing to go back. It wasn't until he was in the intensive care unit on the top floor that he finally saw the person he had been longing for. Emily was covered in all kinds of tubes, and she was so weak that it was almost impossible to see her chest rising and falling. At this moment, the nurse finally caught up and couldn't help but exclaim when she saw her arm. Ethan didn't care, he just stared at the person in the hospital bed. "When will Emily wake up?" The nurse didn't say anything, but Chloe, who had come up with her, teared up. "% Emily has been in a coma for 2 days. The doctor said that her brain was severely injured and that she might never wake up again." Ethan stumbled, nearly falling to the ground, but fortunately, Chloe caught him in time. "Xiaogij, I know you're very sad, but you need to take care of yourself. How could this happen?" He only wanted to give Emily a small lesson, to tell her not to act recklessly in the future. Why would Emily jump directly from the 3rd floor if Emily really didn't want to go abroad? She could have talked to him properly. Why resort to such an extreme measure? He couldn't understand. No matter how hard he tried, the doctor rebandaged his wound and told him that he absolutely could not move around carelessly like this time, otherwise his hands would really be beyond repair. During this time, Mrs. Catherine also came up to persuade him. Mrs. Catherine was already dissatisfied with Emily, and now seeing her son so distracted for such a woman, almost losing both hands, she was even more angry. that Emily could kill herself, but couldn't she find a deserted place to jump? She had to drag you down with her. Look at your good hands. What have they become now? As she spoke, she covered her face and cried. Ethan had always been filial to his mother. In the past, if he saw his mother crying, he would comfort her immediately. But now, he frowned the entire time. Emily is my fiancée, and taking care of her is what I should do, if you're going to say things like that. Mom, please leave, Mrs. Catherine was furious. Chloe quickly mediated. Auntie is just worried. How can you say such things and make her sad? Besides, Emily is in this state now, so the marriage can't continue. Why don't we just cancel the wedding for now? Mrs. Catherine also chimed in. I think Chloe is very good, knowledgeable, reasonable, and gentle. If she hadn't gone abroad with the Shu family's business, you two would have been married long ago. How would Emily have anything to do with it? If you ask me, you might as well marry Wanwan. No, Ethan refused without even thinking. Besides Emily, I won't marry anyone else. This was tantamount to slapping Chloe in the face in public. Mrs. Catherine wanted to say more, but Chloe preemptively pointed out his words. Auntie, let's wait until Emily wakes up before we talk about anything else. This seemingly considerate remark should have earned Ethan's praise. But Ethan just stared at the ceiling with a cold expression the whole time, his eyes filled with unconcealable sorrow. For the next 2 days, Ethan would sit in front of the ICU in his wheelchair. Now, whenever he closed his eyes, all he could think about was the image of Emily jumping out of the window without hesitation that day. When he called out to her, Emily didn't even turn her head to look at him, as if she didn't care about him at all. So when did he and Emily start to become like this? He clearly remembered that Emily was very clingy to him when she first came to the Chu family, and he especially liked this soft and cute little girl. Because of the death of her parents, Emily was always very sensitive and would cry at the slightest thing. To make Emily less sad, he would rack his brains to come up with all sorts of little ideas to make her happy. His funny faces weren't very good, but Emily would always laugh heartily to show her support. On New Year's Eve, he specially prepared fireworks for the whole city. At the moment when the fireworks bloomed in the high sky, Emily asked him with bright eyes, "Are those sparkling fireworks in the sky really my mom and dad watching me?" "Of course, Mom and Dad will always be with you, just like me." It was also on that night that Ethan kissed Emily's face for the first time. It was a hard feeling to describe. It was as if, at that moment, Ethan truly possessed the whole world. He still remembers the day of the engagement announcement, when Emily's vibrant and bright face leaped into his arms, asking him, "Are you really willing to marry me?" He knew that Emily had been somewhat insecure since her parents passed away, feeling like an orphan without the ability to fight for the Nan family's property against those greedy uncles. He had nothing left but a sincere heart. But in the eyes of wealthy families, sincerity is sometimes worthless. He is always unsure if he should be loved, if he is worthy of being loved, so when he asks, he is cautious, with a hint of grievance that others can hardly detect, as if he would burst into tears if the other person gave the wrong answer. At that time, Ethan felt his heart was breaking. He held Emily's face and gently kissed away the tears on her face. Of course I will marry you. You are the only person I will marry in this life." At that moment, he felt like Emily had truly come alive. Having shed her cautious shell, Emily was exceptionally lively and cheerful, displaying her affection with seemingly endless energy every day. Especially when she saw other women trying to get close to him, she was like a little lioness ready to devour them. The first few times, Ethan found it novel and interesting. After all, what man doesn't enjoy feeling possessively owned by the person who loves him? But as time went on, Ethan began to grow impatient. He started to wish that Emily could give him a little more space and freedom, and he often argued with Emily over trivial matters. Each time, Emily would come to him with red eyes to apologize, like a frightened little rabbit, her thumb tightly gripping the side of her middle fingertip, a habitual gesture when she was nervous or scared. "Ethan, I won't be like that anymore. Please don't be angry, okay? Please don't leave me. I have nothing without you." In the end, the one who was at a disadvantage from the very beginning of this relationship was Emily. He was the one who was fearful, he was the one who admitted mistakes and begged for forgiveness. And he was still the one who was anxious about gains and losses, but Ethan, from beginning to end, only passively accepted the emotions brought about by this relationship. Value held Emily firmly in his hands. As for how to soothe Emily's inner unease, how to build an equal love, he never took the initiative to do it. Perhaps in his heart, the sensitive, fragile, isolated and helpless Emily was more suitable to control, so that he could have a sense of accomplishment that he would never lose. Thus, this seemingly stable relationship became precarious after Chloe reappeared. Ethan remembered that Emily had made it clear many times that she didn't want Chloe to get too close to him, but he wasn't the one who couldn't live without her, so why should he obediently listen? Gradually, Chloe's gentleness and consideration stood in stark contrast to Emily's willfulness and capriciousness. It seemed that it was from that time that he first saw disappointment in his eyes from Emily, but he didn't care. He even thought Emily was just playing hard to get. Emily seemed to slowly return to the state she was in when her parents had just passed away, sensitive, suspicious, and cautious, until the expedition to Alau Mountain. The trip to the Alau Mountains was first suggested by Chloe. Previously, he hadn't heard of Shu Wanwan, who had a hobby of outdoor sports. But he didn't refuse, he just didn't expect that when this matter reached Emily's ears, he would also insist on going. When he heard this news, a secret joy even arose in his heart. Emily hated adventures the most, but he was willing to do the thing he hated the most for him. Ethan acquiesced to Emily's following. He even thought that after this adventure, he could arrange the wedding in advance, which would also give Emily a surprise. Unexpectedly, halfway there, Emily almost killed Chloe. And Chloe nearly fell off the hillside. The wound on her leg was covered in blood, so deep that bone was visible, making it especially terrifying in the gloomy jungle. And Emily was staring in the direction of Chloe with a grim expression, as if she couldn't wait to cut him into 1,000 pieces. Ethan was truly enraged. So many people in the expedition team had witnessed Emily's attempted murder. If this were to spread, it would cause huge waves, and could even affect their wedding. After all, Mrs. Catherine had never approved of this marriage from the beginning, so he had to teach Emily a lesson. He left Emily alone in the Alau Mountains for a whole month. Looking back on this decision, Ethan couldn't help but feel a pang of pain in his chest. It was after returning from the Alau Mountains that Emily completely changed. But Emily really went too far with this matter. Even if he didn't like Shu Wan and she approached him, she couldn't kill someone. Ethan had a splitting headache, feeling like he was missing some details. After calming down, he made a call to his assistant, asking him to look into something. In addition, he asked his assistant to contact the best neurology hospital in the country, preparing to send Emily there. After learning this information, Chloe immediately spoke out to stop him, saying that Emily is so seriously injured right now. It might not be a good idea to transfer her to another hospital at this time. Chu Hui smiled and furrowed his brows. Shinya has been here for a week and shows no signs of improvement. I've already made arrangements, and if it doesn't work in the country, I'll send her abroad directly, and I'll personally follow the whole process. But Ethan interrupted Chloe, saying that he had already set the time, and a professional team would take over Emily's care tomorrow. Chloe immediately fell silent, and finally forced out an unnatural smile. Leaving Ethan's ward, he immediately found Dr. Victor. We must make a move tonight. Shu Zhanye was so shocked that he fell directly from the chair. But didn't you say you would wait until we went abroad to do it? If we do it in the country, what if they investigate us? We can't worry about that anymore. Even if we go abroad now, Ethan will be with us the whole time, and there will be no chance to strike. Chloe's brow furrowed even deeper. Besides, even if we don't go abroad, as long as we transfer to another hospital, which doctor wouldn't be able to find out about Emily's problems, then all the lies we told before will be exposed. Dr. Victor has never been one to shoulder responsibility. Back then, after the Shu family moved abroad, their investment strategy failed. His uncle, burdened with hundreds of millions in debt, committed suicide by jumping off a building, and his aunt fell ill, leaving the entire Su family's burden on Dr. Victor's shoulders. But Dr. Victor actually ran away overnight with all the remaining valuables in the house, leaving Chloe and her mother blocked at the door by creditors. If it weren't for Chloe's quick thinking, they would probably have been sold off to some dirty place by those desperate people. If it weren't for his aunt holding his hand before her death, begging him to get Bang Bang, he wouldn't have said another word to Dr. Victor, nor would he have used Ethan's name to swindle people outside, after helping Dr. Victor get the position of director of surgery. Chloe glanced in disgust at Xu Zhanye, who was already terrified and unable to utter a complete sentence. She hardened her heart and said, "Isn't the nurse who takes care of Emily your lover? Tell him that as long as he puts a little medicine in Emily's fore, she will die without anyone knowing. As long as Emily's body remains in this hospital, we have a way to prevent anyone from finding out." That night, while the nurse was changing Emily's dressing, he quietly took a pink injection from his pocket. The temperature in the intensive care unit was not high, but the nurse's forehead was already covered in sweat, and even the hand holding the syringe was shaking. He accidentally dropped the syringe on the ground. Just as he was about to squat down to pick it up, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. Before he could speak, the bodyguard had already picked him up and thrown him out the door. Outside the door, Ethan was waiting for him with a grim expression. The nurse's face turned green, and she fainted with a shiver. Ethan simply waved his hand, and immediately someone dumped a bucket of ice water over the nurse's head. The icy coldness spread throughout her body, and the nurse immediately regained consciousness. The pink potion that had fallen on the ground was also retrieved by the assistant. It had already been tested and found to contain a potent nerve paralytic poison. A mere 0.1 milligram would cause the injected person to die from respiratory failure. Especially in a severe coma like Emily, she probably wouldn't even have a chance to call for help. Ethan had the nurse held down, his expression cold and stern, as if looking at a dead person. "Who told you to do it?" The nurse trembled but couldn't utter a discernible word. One of the bodyguards immediately stomped hard on the nurse's ankle, the piercing pain causing the nurse to scream uncontrollably. If the bodyguard hadn't covered his mouth in time, the entire hospital would have heard his screams. "Who told you to do it?" Ethan asked again. This time, the nurse didn't even dare to hesitate and immediately collapsed on the ground, crying out loud, "It was Chloe and Dr. Victor. They both told me to do it." Chu Huaixiao felt the blood rushing to the top of his head, and only by desperately suppressing it could he squeeze out a few words from between his teeth. "Why? Because since coming out of the Ailao Mountains, Emily's legs have been broken and her organs have severely atrophied. She can't be delayed any longer." But Chloe, in order to get rid of the male nurse, colluded with Dr. Victor to pretend that Emily's body was fine in front of you. "Yesterday, he heard that you were going to transfer the male nurse to another hospital, fearing that the previous incident would be discovered by other hospitals, so he told me to strike first. Not only that, Chloe also specifically instructed me to mix some irritating powder like chili powder into the medicine powder every time I applied it to the male nurse, so that the male nurse could suffer more, and incidentally provoke the conflict between you and Emily. Also, Chloe's original plan was to have me go abroad with Miss Nan, and then find a chance to poison his food so that he would die silently outside, but she didn't expect Miss Nan to jump off the building on the day of departure. So these things didn't happen." As she spoke, the nurse cried harder and harder, her voice almost trembling. "From beginning to end, I was coerced by those two siblings. That Dr. Victor can't even hold a scalpel properly. He only became the chief physician by Chloe's money and resources. Who in this hospital doesn't know that Chloe's backer is you? All that money and resources came from the Chu family. If I want to continue working in this hospital, I have to listen to them." It was like one thunderclap after another, leaving Ethan in shock. So Emily's injuries had already been very serious. Every interaction she had was a cry for help. But what about him? What did he do? He was like a complete fool, led by the nose by Chloe and Dr. Victor. At this moment, Ethan's assistant received a phone call from one of the team members who had gone to Ailao Mountain with Ethan, Emily, and the others for an adventure more than a month ago, some time ago. The phone call Ethan made to his assistant was to have him thoroughly investigate the matter on Ailao Mountain. The team member told Ethan that, in preparation for the Alau mountain adventure, he had prepared several high-definition recording devices in advance, one worn on his chest and the other attached to his backpack throughout the entire trip, because he originally only intended to record his own journey, fearing that others would object. He did not tell anyone that he was carrying recording equipment, and afterwards only intended to edit some footage related to himself. However, some time ago, when he was going through the contents of the storage card in preparation for editing the video, he discovered that the device behind him had accidentally captured something. He originally did not intend to bring these things out. After all, he did not want to offend Chloe. It wasn't until yesterday that the assistant found him. And soon Ethan got that video. The angle of the video wasn't great, but it still clearly recorded the entire process of Emily and Chloe arguing. Chloe deliberately walked up to Emily, saying something with a smug look. The assistant had minored in sign language in college, so he could accurately discern lip movements. He matched Shu Wanwan's lip shapes, repeating each sentence. Your parents must have committed too many sins to die in the mountains, right? I heard their bodies were eaten by wild animals. Their deaths must have been terrible. I wonder what kind of outrageous things they did. As soon as she finished speaking, Chloe fell down on her own. Even as he fell, he even took the time to pull a knife from his pocket and press it hard against his wound. Following that, Ethan angrily rushed over and slapped Emily across the face. Poor Emily didn't even have a chance to argue before he left her alone in that eerie and terrifying place. So that's how it was. That's really how it was. No wonder Emily cried and said, I'll never follow you again. I'll run far, far away. Please don't leave me here. At that moment, he must have been very disappointed to be so casually abandoned by the person he thought he could entrust his life to, near the place where his parents had died tragically in Alau Mountain. How scared must he have been? He must have hated the person who left him, if Ethan didn't have casts on both hands. He might have even grabbed his own head and smashed it against the wall, so he could clearly feel the despair in Emily's heart when she was abandoned. Overwhelming remorse at this moment melted into raging fury, bringing Chloe and Dr. Victor over. When he was dragged out of bed, Dr. Victor was lying on top of a woman. The woman was frightened and screamed, while Shu Zhanya was pounding the bed in a rage. Who are you? Do you know who I am? I am a genius surgical director and also Ethan's brother-in-law. Once my sister marries into the Chu family, I will make sure to kill you ungrateful bastards. Chloe, on the other hand, had been up all night. As the agreed time drew nearer, there were no messages from any nurses on his phone. Even when he actively called them, no one answered. Looking at the clock on the wall, he couldn't help but feel nervous and uneasy. Just as he was pacing anxiously back and forth in the bedroom, a group of bodyguards rushed in, tied his hands without a word, and took him away. At that moment, the unease in his heart was completely magnified until he saw Ethan in person. Xiao Gij, what's going on? Chloe raised his bound wrists and asked pitifully, his eyes filled with the usual weakness and helplessness. The bodyguard coldly threw the tube of pink potion in front of him, and then Dr. Victor was also brought up. Shu Zhanya had clearly suffered, with every inch of his exposed skin covered in bruises. As soon as he saw Chloe, he pointed at him and shouted frantically, "It's this bitch, it was all this bitch's doing. I am a doctor, how could I do such a heinous thing? She wants to marry into the Chu family. So she tried everything to get rid of Emily. I was forced." Chloe was stunned for a moment. He had considered that this might be the ending, but he didn't expect it to come so quickly. Therefore, he desperately crawled to Ethan's legs, took out the words he had prepared long ago, and said with a smile, "Brother, how could you believe an outsider's nonsense? How would I dare to harm Emily? Have you forgotten? On Mount Alau, I was almost pushed off the cliff by Emily." As he spoke, he lifted his skirt to reveal the still hideous scar on his calf. "You saw all of this with your own eyes back then." As long as he puts himself in the position of the victim, he can always gain some sympathy. More or less, this is the most important thing that Chloe has learned over the years. But Ethan did not show the expression of sympathy or pity that he had hoped for, but looked at him with almost disgust. "It was you who fell down the Alau mountain. You used Emily's parents to enrage him, and then blamed it all on Emily. You really deserve to die. Chloe's mind was blank. He had no idea where he went wrong. Why did Ethan even know about this? But he didn't have time to think about it at the moment. He could only desperately grab Ethan's pants, begging, "Brother Xiao, you clearly like me too. Have you forgotten? We were each other's first love. I gave you the best time of my life. Have you forgotten all of that? Emily is the third party between us. Now she's about to die. Can't we get back together?" Not knowing which of his words completely enraged Ethan, he directly kicked Chloe in the chest with deadly force, causing Chloe to vomit blood on the spot. Unrepentant, reversing black and white, countless terrifying echoes rang in Chloe's ears. The scarlet scent of blood filled her nose, and her vision was almost blurred. The only thing she could be sure of was that Ethan would not let him go. He suddenly began to laugh madly, his laughter hoarse, revealing his ugliness. "Ethan, are you ashamed and angry? That's right, I was the one who pretended to fall on Mount Alau. But I didn't issue the order to leave Emily alone there. It was clearly you who wanted both the new and old love, unable to let go of either, which is why you drove Emily to suicide. Now Emily is almost dead, yet you still don't know how to repent, only knowing how to throw dirty water on others. If we're really talking about being unrepentant and reversing black and white, that person should be you." Ethan desperately wanted Chloe to shut up. But he couldn't bring himself to say it because he had to admit that Chloe was telling the truth. He was the one who left Emily alone in the Alau Mountains, and he was the one who used the wedding postponement as a bargaining chip. He was the one who saw Emily in agonizing pain but still thought she was just pretending to be pitiful. He was the one who made Grandma sick and stubbornly insisted on sending Emily abroad, only to learn a lesson. That's why Emily jumped down without hesitation. And that's why she didn't even want to give him a second glance before she died, because he was the culprit. A tearing pain came from his chest, almost making Ethan unable to breathe. Before losing consciousness, he still heard himself shouting, "I'm sorry, Emily. I'm sorry, Emily." When he opened his eyes, the first person he saw was Christopher. It was a strange feeling. He didn't remember his name, nor did he remember his identity. But he was able to call out the other person's name in the first moment he opened his eyes. Christopher. The man's warm palm immediately cushioned behind his slightly raised head, as if afraid that he would hurt himself if he didn't control his strength. Christopher's hand holding him was trembling slightly, but he didn't dare to show any excited expression on his face, for fear of scaring him. As the first sip of water entered his mouth, a flood of memories rushed into his mind. He remembered his name. He was called Emily, and he also remembered that he had a fiancée who had been guarding him for 3 years. Christopher's mind was like two memories intertwining repeatedly. Gradually, the victorious memory took over, and the tears in Christopher's eyes finally fell on the back of Emily's hand. He heard the other person's voice, slightly choked with sobs. "You're finally awake. I knew you would wake up." Emily was an orphaned girl adopted by the Gu family. Her parents died, and she had no one to rely on. The Gu family adopted him only to gain a good reputation. Therefore, from the moment he stepped into the Gu family, Yuan Man was cautious, afraid to make a sound while eating, afraid to make extra movements while walking, and even afraid to make eye contact with others easily in the corridor. His heart was always in a state of trembling, and he was extremely afraid every day that he would be driven out of the Gu family because of his inappropriate words and deeds, until Christopher returned from abroad. The first time Christopher laid eyes on her, Emily's heart fluttered. There shouldn't be any woman in this world who could resist a man as handsome and gentle as Christopher. Emily thought so, but she still didn't dare to look up, nor did she dare to have any extra contact with Christopher. But Christopher always came to find her. Sometimes he didn't know how to use the local software and wanted her to teach him how to use it step by step. Sometimes he broke an egg and pitifully begged her to teach him how to make it golden brown on both sides. Sometimes he couldn't express a complete Chinese sentence and pulled on her sleeve, asking her if she could practice speaking with him more. Every time Emily taught him, he could always learn quickly. And then look at Emily with starry eyes full of adoration. Man, how can you be so amazing?" Yuan Man often blushed when he looked at her like that, and afterwards couldn't help but wonder if she was really that amazing. Could there be any shining points on someone like him? Emily began to learn to treat Christopher like a teacher. This is not how this function works. Making fish is as simple as frying eggs. How can you not even speak clearly? It wasn't until later that Emily learned that although Christopher had lived abroad since he was a child, he had no shortage of domestic teachers around him, and he had been a genius since he was a child, proficient in 8 languages. As for cooking, Christopher had godlike taste buds. He could replicate the exact same taste of most dishes as long as he tasted them once. But Christopher hid it well. The clumsy and very sensitive Emily never realized that she might be living in the Truman Show. On the contrary, under Christopher's guidance, he gradually got rid of his bad habits of inferiority and self-pity, and even felt that he was smarter than the so-called genius teenagers in other people's eyes. Christopher took him to see the stars, and halfway through, he realized that he had become part of Christopher's scenery. He asked, "Why are you looking at me like that?" Christopher said, "Because I find that man looking up is more beautiful than man looking down." When she was 19 years old, Emily and Christopher officially got together. The elders of the GU family were not satisfied with Emily, and some even gossiped behind her back, saying that Emily was after Christopher's family wealth and had deliberately played the victim to get into the GU family in order to seduce the heir of the family. Whenever he heard these crazy rumors, Christopher would always be the first to step forward and clarify. He was always gentle. But when he looked at someone with a fierce expression, no one could withstand his gaze for more than 3 seconds. The rumors were easily dispelled, and even the opposition from Gu's parents was suppressed by Christopher. Emily was both happy and scared. Even though there were no more opposing voices around her, Christopher was too outstanding. And there were countless girls around him. She really couldn't be considered the best of them. Christopher could always easily sense her thoughts. So he would write Emily a love letter every day and ask Emily not to accept it. Originally, Emily thought this was just a small game that Christopher was playing with her. On the surface, it was a love letter, but there shouldn't be any words inside. But when he couldn't resist his curiosity and opened one of them, he discovered the sincerity and deep affection in every word. So he opened the second and third letters, each filled with Christopher's most genuine love for him. Over time, everyone in the school knew that the school heartthrob Christopher was pursuing a girl, and that girl was actually hesitant to agree. The girls who originally wanted to surround him all retreated. Christopher used his own way to tell Emily that he only loved man in the whole world. Finally, at the age of 21, they held a grand engagement ceremony. Everyone in the city knew that Christopher was going to marry Emily. When the dazzling diamond ring was placed on her ring finger, Emily almost cried out. For the entire year that followed, he was immersed in beautiful love. Until the graduation trip, he wanted to prove to Christopher that he had really become brave. So the destination was set in the Alau Mountains, and it was during that trip that Yuan-man died from a red fruit. Christopher led a professional search and rescue team for a full year, finally digging Emily out of a layer of leaf-covered topsoil. Those who participated in the search and rescue said that compared to the completeness of being found, Christopher was more like a walking corpse, only showing a glimmer of life in his eyes when he saw his lover. No one knew when Emily died, or perhaps Emily didn't die at all. Her body showed no signs of decay, and her grayish-white complexion even had a hint of rosiness. If you listened carefully, you could almost hear something beating in her chest. But medically, it was impossible to prove that Emily was still alive. But Christopher didn't care. He carefully carried Emily's body back home, treating her as if she were a normal wife. In the past 2 years, Christopher had tried countless methods. Although none of them were successful, he never gave up. He believed that his man would one day return. Sure enough, 2 years later, Yuan-man finally woke up. Those sweet memories from the past became clearer with Emily's awakening. And he gradually accepted Christopher, calling her man. Although subconsciously, he still felt that he was Emily. As long as Christopher liked him, he felt that a name was just a title. Perhaps because he had lost her once, Christopher seemed particularly anxious about gains and losses, completely unable to accept the absence of his lover from his sight, as if the former Emily and the current Christopher had completely reversed roles. So, on a clear, sunny morning, Emily leaned into Christopher's arms and said, "Ah Chen, let's get married." In the sunlight, Christopher's eyelashes trembled slightly. When Yuan Man first woke up, he wanted to say this, but he was afraid that Emily had been asleep for too long, long enough to forget their relationship. He was afraid of scaring his man, but Emily actually brought it up herself. Christopher nodded without any hesitation, and the wedding was set for the 18th of next month. Emily's recovery was good, and she was able to be discharged from the hospital after half a month. The moment she walked out of the ward, she suddenly felt a sense of detachment, but also felt some unfamiliar memories flashing in her mind from time to time. As if following guidance, she walked all the way to the top floor. There are usually 5 or 6 security guards and nurses on duty in shifts, but strangely, there was no one at the door at this time, so Emily walked in very easily. The snow-white walls were the same as her ward, but also a little different, seeming to reveal pain and depression. Pushing open the innermost door, he finally saw the person lying in the hospital bed. It was a young woman, but her face was far too pale. She lay there quietly, as if she had already stopped breathing. Seeing her, for some reason, those strange memories in his mind began to flash back frantically. Emily needed to hold onto the edge of the bed to barely stand steady. Just as his hand fell, his fingertips seemed to touch something soft, like the hand of the person in the hospital bed. Before he could think about it, all the instruments started beeping alarms in unison, and even the red light at the door began to flash incessantly. Emily was frightened and hurried to run out, supporting herself against the wall. Fortunately, he acted quickly enough and soon left the top floor. But even after running downstairs, his heart was still pounding, as if it was about to jump out of his chest. His body had only just recovered, and he had just been frightened again, plus the jogging all the way. He was almost at the edge of being unable to support himself. The second before he fainted, he saw a figure running towards him with all its might. When he woke up, he found himself lying in a bedroom. The familiar setting felt as if Christopher had already taken his hand the next moment. Slowly, "You finally wake up." Christopher's feigned composure finally cracked, revealing a trace of fear. No one knows the panic and dread in his heart when he saw Emily fall before him. Everyone only knows that he foolishly waited for Yuan Man for 3 years. But no one knows how he got through those 3 years, the countless rumors that persuaded him to give up, the eyes that would never open again, had almost become his nightmare every night. He was always afraid of not being able to sleep, because if things continued like this, sooner or later his body would not be able to hold on. But he was also afraid of falling asleep, because as soon as he fell asleep, Yuan Man in his dream would leave him forever and run into the arms of another strange man. He was extremely afraid and heartbroken, but there was nothing he could do. He could only stay by Emily's bed day after day, hoping that his Yuan Man would slowly return to his side. Perhaps it was heaven's pity that Emily woke up again. He knew very well that his man was still the same as before, but there was also something more, but he didn't care about it at all, as long as his man could wake up. However, man was late and did not appear even though it was the agreed time for discharge. He panicked and hurried into the hospital to check. Just a second before entering the hospital, he saw Emily slowly collapsing. He almost thought history was going to repeat itself. But fortunately, this time man didn't keep him waiting for long. Nevertheless, he could no longer suppress the fear in his heart, and tightly hugged Emily in his arms. Man, don't leave me, never leave me again." Emily's heart felt like a piece was missing, and boundless heartache surged in madly along that gap. He gently wiped away the tears on Christopher's face. "I won't leave you. I finally got to see you again. How could I bear to leave?" When Ethan received the call from his assistant, he was in the lake searching for a ring. The engagement ring he had personally thrown away in front of Emily and Grandma. After visiting 3 different hospitals and gathering the most renowned domestic and international physicians in internal medicine, surgery, and other specialties, no one could explain Emily's current condition. She wasn't breathing, there was no brain activity, and only a faint rise and fall of her chest remained. Some even believed that her condition should be classified as death, but Ethan refused to believe it. Emily was lying there perfectly fine. She simply hadn't opened her eyes yet. She was still alive. without a diagnosis. It was difficult to find a targeted treatment. At this point, a doctor suggested that they might try treating her as a person in a vegetative state. Although people in a vegetative state cannot respond externally, they can still receive transmitted information. Therefore, perhaps frequently mentioning past events in front of the patient could awaken a glimmer of life. And to recall the past, it would be best to have some objects to aid in the process. Ethan immediately returned to the Chu family. He remembered that Emily had drawn many pictures for him. He wanted to move all the paintings to the ward. Perhaps Emily would be willing to wake up when she saw them. But when he stood in the empty room, he realized that everything related to Emily was gone: clothes, jewelry, photos, including those words. The servant on the side whispered an explanation. It was Miss Chloe who instructed us to pack all of Emily's things and send them to the airport. She also said that Miss Nan would not be coming back from abroad this time, so she must bring all her things with her, and not leave anything behind. Ethan suddenly remembered the day he was preparing to send Emily abroad. He seemed to hear Emily say to the person on the other end of the phone, "I don't want it anymore." At that time, he had asked Emily, but she just shook her head calmly. A few pieces of old clothing. Ethan suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart and hurriedly sent someone to the airport. The result he got was that Emily had taken the initiative to ask the airport staff to throw away all his luggage, including those words. The airport staff also said that since it had been several days, those things should have been sent to the garbage dump and burned. Ethan was almost going crazy. He realized Emily's determination for the first time so deeply. Tears flowed from between his fingers, and he suddenly remembered the engagement ring on his ring finger. The engagement ring that he and Emily had chosen together. He still remembered the smile that Emily couldn't hide in her eyes when she put the engagement ring on him. So all that Emily left him was that engagement ring. He returned to the original hospital and came to that window. A few fallen leaves floated on the large lake, and occasionally small pebbles from the shore rolled down and disappeared quickly. Ethan spent money to hire a professional salvage team to search for the ring at the bottom of the lake. But such a needle-in-a-haystack act was destined to be fruitless, so he hired someone to drain all the water from the lake. The bottom of the lake was covered with 3 or 4 meters of silt. And even if the water was drained, it would still be a drop in the bucket for salvaging a ring. Mr. Richard and Mrs. Catherine also came in person, but they were there to dissuade Ethan. Mr. Richard looked at the son he once took pride in, his eyes constantly revealing disappointment. For a woman, "You're neglecting the company and throwing away your future. I think you've gone mad." Mrs. Catherine also rebuked unhappily, "I won't say anything about you keeping such a half-alive, half-dead person in the hospital, but now you're making such a fuss to get a ring. You're the only heir to the Chu family. You need to be measured in your actions. What will people outside think of us if you act like this?" Ethan raised his head, but his eyes were devoid of their former brilliance. In the past, it was because he cared too much about the opinions of outsiders that he cruelly left Emily alone in a place like Alau Mountain, because his parents didn't like Emily that much. He tried every means to transform Emily into the kind of person his parents would like, thereby pushing Emily further and further away. But he was the one who truly loved Emily, and he was the one who wanted to marry Emily, so why should he care about the opinions of his parents and outsiders? So, for the first time, he verbally refused Mr. Richard Mrs. Catherine's request. "I want Emily. I want her to wake up. If he is destined not to wake up, then I will die with him." For a whole week, Ethan followed the salvage team, searching every inch of the mud, bit by bit. The mud was sometimes covered with various gravel and broken glass. Park Huixiao had no salvage experience and only used brute force to search. His gloves were often cut, and deeper cuts would sink into the flesh, merging with the mud into black blood. But the physical pain was far less unbearable than the despair in his heart. In the end, he was almost searching by instinct, until he received this call from his assistant. He rushed to the hospital. The mud on Ethan's body had not yet been washed off, and his handsome face was covered with fatigue, as if he had aged 10 years in an instant. "Is Emily awake?" The dean, who had been waiting anxiously, hurriedly interjected, "Half an hour ago." The instruments in the male patient's ward issued an abnormal alarm. almost measuring brief brainwaves and heartbeats, but now they have returned to calm. We have been closely monitoring the situation, and although we have not yet reached a definitive conclusion, the fact that we can measure brainwaves and heartbeats is definitely a good thing. Not knowing how to describe his current mood, Ethan walked to the bedside and gently took Emily's hand, her pale face still calm and serene. "What do you plan to do now?" Ethan asked. A doctor walked in with a tablet. The dean took the tablet and played a video for Ethan. "The most important thing now is to find out why Nan's body had abnormal fluctuations. So we searched for videos from the time leading up to the incident and found a special person." Ethan took the tablet. In the video, a thin woman walked into the intensive care unit. Initially, all the instruments were running normally, until the woman's hand accidentally touched Emily. For less than a second, all the instruments began to ring frantically. Every corner of the intensive care unit is equipped with surveillance, so we can clearly capture the woman's face. It was a face that Ethan had never seen before, but for some reason, he saw a strange sense of familiarity in this face. Who is this woman? The assistant had already received the investigation results and handed a newspaper cover to Ethan's grave. On the 18th of this month, the heir of the GU family wants to hold a wedding with his fiancée, who is the woman in the video. Ethan looked at the news and suddenly felt an unspeakable feeling in his heart. The GU family's status in this city is almost on par with the Chu family. So the GU family heir Christopher and Ethan also knew each other and had brief conversations at several receptions. However, 3 years ago, this heir faded out of the public eye for some reason. But now there is suddenly news that he is going to marry his fiancée. "Did you check the identity of this woman?" The assistant nodded. "Her name is Emily, and she is an orphan adopted by the GU family. She got engaged to Christopher 3 years ago. But later he disappeared in an adventure in Alau Mountain. I heard that Christopher searched for him for a whole year before finally finding him in Alau Mountain. When he was found, Yuan Man's physical functions had almost dropped to zero. And many doctors had given her a death sentence. But strangely, he suddenly woke up half a month ago." As the assistant spoke, he noticed that Ethan's face was growing increasingly pale, to the point where he could barely stand without holding onto the wall. The GU Corporation's assistant wanted to help him, but Ethan stopped him with a hand. His voice was weak, yet filled with an uncontrollable madness. "Are you saying Yuan Man also went to Alau Mountain? And after coming out of Alau Mountain, she became a vegetable?" The assistant was about to nod, but was surprised to find that this complete experience was so similar to Emily's, as if it were a copy. Before he could recover, he heard Ethan's command, which brooked no refusal: "I want to see him." With less than 10 days left until the wedding, Christopher is juggling company business and wedding preparations, barely able to keep his feet on the ground. Yet, he still sets aside half his time each day to be with Emily. Emily knows that Christopher was frightened by his sudden collapse last time. He wishes he could keep Emily by his side at all times, where he can see and touch her, but is afraid that doing so would restrict Emily's freedom. He wouldn't have had such thoughts before, but he has waited 3 years, tasting hope and despair, and has almost been tormented to the point of losing the ability to love normally. However, he doesn't dare to reveal anything, fearing that if he shows too much, it will cause his lover to resent him. After all, everyone wants to show their best side to the person they love the most. Emily felt a pang of sympathy, yet she didn't know what she could do to comfort her lover. While preparing wedding souvenirs, she suddenly stumbled upon the love letters Christopher had once sent him, a total of 132. Many of the letters had yellowed and curled at the edges because he used to read them so often. The affection of his lover revealed in every line. Emily admitted that she didn't have Christopher's talent for writing, for filling every page with love, but he could paint. With this in mind, Emily had a flash of inspiration. He found the long unused easel at home and, as if by muscle memory, splashed colors onto the canvas. Every detail in the painting corresponded to the words in the love letters, eventually constructing the Christopher in his heart. Strangely, while he was painting, the face of another man occasionally appeared in his mind, as if he had once painted someone else with such patience and care. However, he didn't dwell on it, but instead focused on completing the painting. When Christopher returned home, he saw Emily standing in front of the easel, painting, slowly. Emily turned her head and looked back at Christopher. "I don't know how to express my love for you, nor do I know what to do to keep you from worrying about me because of me, but I can paint, so I want to replicate the way you loved me back then. From today onwards, I will paint a picture for you every day. And the content of the painting will correspond to the love letters you wrote to me. Kitchen, I'm not as good at loving as you are, nor as good at expressing myself. But I want to tell you that I really love you and will never leave you, because I came back for you." Christopher felt as if something had gently bumped into his heart. He thought he had controlled himself very well, but it turned out that all this time, she knew all about his unease, fear, and panic. Christopher couldn't help but step forward and hug Emily. Emily has always loved to draw, but he never drew him, he once asked Emily, who always lowered his head and said he didn't dare to draw because he was afraid he wouldn't draw well enough. But many times, Christopher had seen him in Emily's studio. In the still of the night, Emily's drawing paper was covered with him. But in the early hours of the next morning, he would destroy those words. He saw the unease and reluctance in Emily's eyes as he destroyed those words. That's when he knew that Emily was still afraid of losing. The trauma of his childhood made him subconsciously feel that nothing would ever belong to him, so even when loved, he was still full of defensiveness. That's why Christopher came up with the idea of writing him love letters. If a lover is always worried about losing, then the best way is to tell him again and again that he will never lose. If once is not enough, say it twice. If twice is not enough, say it 10 times. If 10 times is not enough, say it 100 times. How can there be a shortcut to loving someone? Those 100+ love letters finally opened the door to fulfillment. And they successfully got engaged and are about to enter the halls of marriage. Christopher once thought he had truly succeeded, that he had successfully opened his lover's heart with his love, and that they would never be apart again, but reality dealt him a heavy blow, and he realized that death would completely take his lover away. After that, even when Emily finally woke up, he no longer felt safe, and the feeling of anxiety almost overwhelmed him. But today, Yuan Man took the initiative to pick up the brush and paint it, as if the wish from 3 years ago had finally come true at this moment. His man finally had the ability to love. Christopher finally hugged him tightly and placed a kiss on his forehead. Man, thank you for telling me that you came back for me. Emily sits in the studio every day. When she gets tired of painting, she looks at the scenery outside the window. Servants often call her to discuss wedding dresses, confirm the style of the wedding venue, or finalize the guest list. Her whole day is always busy, and every evening is the time she looks forward to the most, because Christopher will come back. Since the last time they talked it out, Christopher has visibly become much happier, often pulling out all kinds of small gifts from his pockets as if by magic. "I was so bored during the meeting today, so I secretly folded a rose to give to you. I passed by a shop window in the mall, and I saw this necklace at first glance. I think you will definitely like it. This is the first ray of sunshine I saw this morning. I thought it was very beautiful, so I took a picture and wanted to share it with you." Each time, Emily couldn't help but smile. So today, when the servant knocked on the door, his first reaction was that Christopher had come home early from work. He happily opened the studio door, only to find a stranger standing outside the door. "You are, actually." Ethan was also meeting Emily for the first time, but he instinctively felt displeased by his surprise, as if Yuan Man shouldn't have such a surprised expression, but he didn't show anything on his face, just smiled and replied, "I am Ethan." Emily frowned, looking at the slightly weathered man in front of her, and asked, "Excuse me, what can I do for you?" Ethan, not at all concerned about Emily's defensiveness, turned sideways and walked into the studio, answering as he went, "Mr. Gu has entrusted my company with the music for the wedding, and I've come specifically to ask for the bride's opinion." In reality, Ethan wasn't entirely lying either. Christopher did entrust the music for the wedding venue to a media company under the Chu family name. However, that media company was just a subsidiary, and no matter how large the business, it wouldn't be able to trouble the Gu family's heir to discuss the deal, although displeased with Ethan's uninvited presence. Emily didn't say much after hearing the reason. I hope the music at the venue can be light and fun. To be honest, I don't really understand these things. Perhaps you can talk to Kitchen about it. Kitchen, hearing such an easygoing term of endearment come from the other person's mouth. Ethan's displeasure grew even more obvious, almost to the point of being uncontrollable. He could only quickly turn his head to avoid the other person noticing. This turn of his head happened to catch sight of the painting on the easel. Those strokes, composition, and color combinations were all too familiar to Ethan, because Emily used to paint like this. What's more, the painting was of a man, and Ethan almost subconsciously thought of himself in Emily's paintings. "Did you paint these?" Emily nodded, but felt that Ethan's tone was increasingly off. Ethan couldn't help but move closer to the painting, and was surprised to find a circle in the lower left corner of the painting. He remembered that Emily was the same, drawing a circle in the lower left corner of every painting. He had once asked Emily out of curiosity, and Emily said, "Because I am Emily, the circle represents a full moon. I don't like writing my name on paintings, so that circle is my exclusive signature." Ethan felt his breath catch in his throat. He pointed at the circular pattern in the lower left corner of the painting. Having to work very hard to control his voice so as not to sound rude. "What is that?" Emily glanced at the pattern and calmly replied, "Oh, that's my signature." "What did you say?" Emily was surprised by Ethan's loss of composure, but she still patiently explained, "My name is Emily, and that circle represents a full moon. I don't like writing my name on the painting, so that circle is my signature." Almost an identical answer. Ethan suddenly felt that the person in front of him was his Emily, but such a thought was too crazy, and he couldn't be sure for a moment, until he saw the paint stain on Emily's left index finger. "You paint with your left hand." This time, Ethan could no longer suppress the tremor in his voice. Emily took a step back subconsciously, her thumb tightly clasping the side of her middle finger's pulp. That was a subconscious action she often made when she was nervous or scared. Ethan certainly noticed it too. From the moment he saw that circle, his gaze was involuntarily drawn to the woman before him, uncontrollably following her every move. These little actions were exactly the same as Emily used to do. His voice was almost a roar as he asked, "Tell me, do you also paint with your left hand?" Emily was startled. She didn't dare answer anymore and instinctively retreated to the door, ready to run out for help, but she was a beat too slow. Just as her hand touched the doorknob, Ethan grabbed her tightly from behind. Emily, is that you? You are my Emily, aren't you? Your soul left your body and came into someone else's, didn't it?" Holding him, in that instant, Ethan reaffirmed his thoughts, the exact same scent. This woman possesses the exact same scent as Emily. How could such a coincidence exist in this world? How could two different people be so alike? Emily was completely terrified, struggling desperately, constantly calling out Christopher's name. "Kitchen, help me, Kitchen, where are you?" His movements were so panicked and helpless that in his agitation, his forehead accidentally hit the doorframe, quickly leaving a large, bright red bruise on his fair skin. Ethan saw it and covered his wound with heartache. "Emily, what's wrong?" Seeing the opportunity, Emily bit down on Ethan's tiger's mouth, biting so hard that blood quickly seeped from the skin, and Ethan let go because of the pain. Emily quickly grabbed the door handle again and rushed out of the studio as quickly as possible, bumping into a warm embrace in her. Man, what's wrong?" Christopher immediately took Emily into his arms to comfort her. Man, don't be afraid, tell me what happened." At this moment, Ethan also walked out of the studio. He put his bitten hand into his pocket. His face had returned to composure. And he even greeted Christopher friendly. "President GU, long time no see." Meeting Ethan's meaningful eyes, Emily suddenly paused, unsure what to say. After calming down, he still chose to tell Christopher the truth, but before he could speak, Ethan spoke first. "The Chu family and the GU family are about to cooperate soon. I'm here today specifically to discuss the details of the contract with President GU. I'm sorry for taking up President Gu's rest time, this time." Emily completely shut her mouth. The Chu and GU families are the two most powerful families in the city. Once they cooperate, the benefits will be considerable. if he tells Christopher what happened in the studio just now, not only will the cooperation fail, but the two families may also become completely hostile. He doesn't want Christopher to be in such a dilemma. Christopher politely nodded to Ethan, but still held Emily's hand tightly. Man, what exactly happened? You can tell me. Ethan said unhurriedly, just now, a caterpillar fell from the plane tree outside the window and landed right at Miss Yuan's feet, so she was so scared that she rushed out of the studio. Emily nodded. From Christopher's knowing expression, Ethan knew that he had guessed right again this time. The former Emily was also afraid of caterpillars. When Christopher left, Ethan deliberately passed by Emily and whispered a word. Yeah, don't be afraid, I won't hurt you. The wedding day arrived as scheduled, and Emily felt a little flustered and happy. Her friends told her that this was called pre-wedding syndrome, and many brides experience it, so there was no need to panic. According to wedding customs, the bride and groom cannot meet the day before the wedding, so Christopher could only contact her by phone and messages. Don't be afraid, we'll see each other soon. I'm actually very nervous too. But as long as I think that after today you will be my legal wife, I feel that waiting is also sweet. Emily, wearing a long, trailing wedding dress, added a wedding ring to Christopher in the painting, and then instructed the wedding designer to hang this last painting at the wedding site as soon as possible. There were 26 in total, which was far from the number of love letters, but enough to fill the background of the auditorium. He named today's painting Beginning. From today onwards, he would no longer be painting his fiancée, but his true husband. Thinking of this, Emily couldn't help but laugh. The servant outside the door told him that the wedding procession was already on its way and was expected to arrive in about 5 minutes. Emily responded with her okay, and adjusted her skirt in the mirror again. Just as she was about to leave the room, she seemed to see a dark shadow in the mirror. Before she could take a closer look, a square towel covered in medicine was pressed over her mouth and nose. Before she even had time to struggle, she completely fell into a coma. She didn't know how long had passed, but when she woke up again, she found herself in a car, presumably being taken away. The elaborate wedding dress had not had time to be changed, but the train was simply and crudely cut off, and the petticoat was removed. When she looked up, she met Ethan's gaze, gentle yet with a hint of obsession. Only then did she finally realize that she had been lying in Ethan's arms all along. She struggled to get up, but was forcibly held down. Emily, didn't you used to love it when I held you? Why are you running away? Some fragmented images flashed through Emily's mind. What exactly are you trying to do? I'm telling you, no matter where you want to take me, you will always find me. There was obvious irritation in Ethan's eyes. Christopher, why do you always have to call his name? He's not your lover. I am the one who loves you. Only Kitchen. Ethan took a deep breath to barely suppress his anger. He put on a gentle mask again, carefully stroking Emily's hair. The gesture was clearly full of love, but it made Emily's scalp tingle. It's okay, you've just lost your memory. Soon you'll know who your true lover is. Soon. The car stopped, and it wasn't until her feet touched the ground that Emily finally realized that Ethan had actually brought her to the foot of Alau Mountain. When getting out of the car, Emily lost her balance and fell to the ground. Ethan quickly and held her in his arms, constantly asking if she was hurt anywhere. At this moment, a man in a black robe, his entire face shrouded in shadows, spoke up to remind him, President Chu, don't delay the time. He was carried into Alau Mountain in Chu Huai's arms. This section of the road was unusually familiar, as if he had walked it 3 years ago, or perhaps 3 months ago. The memories in his mind were in a chaotic state, and he couldn't tell which part was real and which was fake. The man in the black robe stared at him, a creepy smile appearing on his face. Miss Nan, your memory is about to return. He didn't know how long he walked until Ethan finally stopped under a large tree deep in Alau Mountain, and Emily was surprised to find that there was a person lying under the tree. Perhaps that's not accurate, because the woman wasn't breathing, and her chest wasn't moving, as if she had been dead for a long time. He recognized her. That woman was the person he saw in the intensive care unit on the top floor of the hospital. Memories flooded his mind, and for a moment, the pain was so intense that he couldn't stand. Ethan wanted to come up and support her, but the black-robed man stopped him. Those memories had to be retrieved by her on their own, and only when she remembered them could he switch their souls back. Didn't he want to see his lover come back to life? Ethan finally withdrew his hand, only staring at Emily with a worried expression. Emily, at this moment, couldn't hear anything. The fragmented scenes that used to appear on a daily basis had finally pieced together into complete fragments, as if to shatter and reorganize her memories. He also seemed to finally remember that he had made a deal with the undead here. The undead used their last strength to save him and gave him all of their memories. The only condition for the exchange was to have her marry Christopher. So now she is both Emily and Yuan Man. The black-robed man seemed to see through her thoughts, and his cold voice sounded again. It seems that Miss Yuan Man has remembered everything. Then it's just right that the ceremony can begin. The black-robed man seemed to draw some symbols in the air. For a moment, a gust of wind swept through the already gloomy forest, as if guided by something unfamiliar. Emily followed closely, walking to the side of the sleeping body. Now, she had completely remembered the time she spent with Ethan, the sweetness and happiness they shared. But in the end, they reached their end. Emily did not regret having such a memory, but she absolutely did not want to return to Ethan's side again. She struggled to look at Ethan. Even if you forcibly put my soul back into this body, I could never love you again. The only person I love is Christopher. No, it can't be. Ethan looked at him somewhatly. The master said that once you return to your original body, the complete memory will no longer exist. You say you love Christopher, but that's only because you're influenced by that memory. Without that memory, Christopher will only be a stranger to you, Emily. I know I've made a lot of mistakes in the past, but I swear I will change. Please, give me another chance, okay? The wind in the forest grew stronger, and Emily felt as if her soul was being torn apart. She couldn't help but let out a painful wail. No, I don't want to. I just want to be with Christopher. I promised him. I only came for him and will never leave him. Listening to his beloved thinking of another man, Ethan felt a heart-wrenching pain. Why? Why wouldn't Emily give him another chance? But does Emily really hate him that much? At this moment, the wind in the forest seemed to be stopped by some force, and the man in the black robe frowned, muttering, "It's actually a soul with two bodies." Ethan was shocked. What does that mean? The man in the black robe explained. It means that Emily and Emily's bodies share a soul. Simply put, Emily and Yuan Man are the same person, so they will have the same habits, the same personality, and even similar experiences. Because they are the same person, only their souls are divided into two halves, living in two different bodies. What do we do now? The original soul was easy to extract from the body, but the situation is different now. If Miss Nan is unwilling, I can only forcibly strip her soul. But in that case, the soul may be torn apart, and then Miss Nan and Miss Yuan may not survive. Ethan was completely stunned. He didn't want Emily to fall in love with another man. Nor could he watch Nanyu die. Just then, a strange noise suddenly came from the forest. Christopher was here. The moment Shin-chan saw Christopher, Emily cried out in surprise. However, before Christopher could get close, a black-robed man held a knife to his throat. "No, don't hurt him." Slowly. The black-robed man completely ignored him, only looking at Ethan. "President Chu, make a decision quickly. Once the time passes, even if you want to exchange, you won't be able to." Chu Huixiao didn't speak for a moment, but Christopher spoke first. Slowly, "I don't want you to die, even if you don't remember me or love me in the future. I hope you can live happily. I really can't bear the pain of losing you again." He was already in tears as he said this, but Lan Yu shook her head in pain. "But I won't be happy if I forget you. If I just live like that, I'd rather die." Saying that, Emily took out a shard of glass from her waist, which she had picked up after pretending to fall when getting out of the car. One side of the shard was exceptionally sharp, capable of easily cutting his throat. At that moment, Ethan was in so much pain that he couldn't breathe. He had never imagined. He knew Emily hated him, but he never imagined that Emily would love Christopher so much, even willing to do this to preserve that memory. He couldn't describe the feelings in his heart, perhaps pain, perhaps helplessness. But the only thing he knew was that he didn't want Emily to die. Almost immediately, he shouted to Emily, "No, Emily, don't do this. I'm willing to let you go back." Emily was stunned for a moment, and in that short second, the glass shards in her hand were knocked away by the black-robed man with force, only to hear the black-robed man's cold voice ring out again. "President Chu, it's too late for you to regret it now. Did you really think I came for your money? This kind of soul with two bodies in one is a rare occurrence in 100 years. If I can refine it, my power will completely break through." The forest wind grew stronger, and the black-robed man, clutching Emily's neck, was about to bite down when a gunshot rang out in the forest. The next moment, blood trickled from the black-robed man's forehead, and he collapsed to the ground. Christopher rushed over and held Emily tightly in his arms. At this moment, the sniper who had been hiding in the woods finally appeared. Actually, as early as when Ethan first appeared at the GU family, Christopher became suspicious. However, Emily hadn't voiced her concerns, so he didn't ask proactively. He secretly arranged over a dozen bodyguards and snipers around Emily, and installed a miniature locator in the necklace he gave to Emily. Therefore, he knew immediately when Emily had an accident. Appearing alone just now was also to avoid arousing the vigilance of Ethan and the black-robed man. The team leader looked at the photo for a long time before using the walkie-talkie to notify Ethan. When he woke up, he was already back home, and Christopher was watching over him. He couldn't help but hug the man in front of him tightly, afraid that he was just dreaming. Christopher smiled and embraced him, his eyes full of tenderness. Slowly, "It's okay, I'm here. You don't have to be afraid of anything." 3 days later, Yuan Man and Christopher's wedding was held again, and they exchanged wedding rings for each other in the presence of family and friends. Amidst the cheers of the crowd, he and Christopher shared a long and sweet kiss. In the intensive care unit, Ethan lay next to Emily's body. After coming out of the Alau Mountains, Emily's body gradually began to decompose rapidly, a symbol of complete death. But Ethan still did not choose to bury her, but instead wiped her body every day, trying to make Emily look clean and beautiful. On this day, he specially put Emily in a wedding dress ahead of time, and also prepared a groom's suit for himself. In fact, he had prepared this a long time ago. He just lay quietly beside Emily, slowly injecting the medicine in the syringe into his veins. "Emily, I'm coming to join you." The following is the second story record. When he came back, I was printing the divorce agreement, and he stood at the door with his suitcase, looking at me doubtfully. "Didn't you go to work today?" I shook my head. "Something came up, so I took a leave of absence." He acknowledged and carried his suitcase upstairs. Before long, he came down after putting his things away, holding a delicately wrapped box in his hand. He walked towards me and casually handed me the box, saying it was a gift he brought me from his business trip. And to stop saying he wasn't romantic, my heart trembled, reminded of where that phrase came from. Many times before, whether it was on our anniversaries, birthdays, or various Valentine's days, I would prepare gifts for him, but he would always come back empty-handed, without any gesture. It wasn't that I necessarily wanted him to give me something very expensive, but at these times, I, like other women, hoped to receive a little surprise, a little romance. So every time he came back empty-handed, I would call him a clueless straight man, not romantic enough, too rigid. It wasn't until a few days ago when I came across a short video officially translated by Her First Love that I realized he wasn't unromantic. Just that he didn't see the need to be romantic for someone he didn't love. I reached out and took it, placed it aside to time it, paused for a moment, and asked with some surprise, "Aren't you going to open it and take a look?" I didn't answer, but flipped through the printed divorce agreement and handed it to him. He immediately took it, and when he saw the words divorce agreement, he was instantly stunned. What do you mean, you want a divorce?" I nodded. "Yes, divorce. Why?" he asked, still unwilling to give up. "Just because I didn't spend the anniversary with you before, or is there another reason?" I chuckled. "Why aren't you clear about it?" He met my playful smile, as if guessing the answer. "Is it because of Guan Yi? I've said it before, he and I are just friends. I admit we were together before, but we broke up years ago. We've been married for 5 years now. Why are you still hung up on him?" I nodded in agreement. "Yes, you're friends, your relationship is completely innocent. It's just me being malicious. You both seemed relieved when you heard me say that, thinking I understood, but the next second I spoke again. But none of that changes the fact that I want a divorce. Then you'll be free to be friends with whoever you want, and I naturally won't have any right to interfere. The color drained from your face again, even though it had just returned. He roared, Lin-Cinny, can you stop being so unreasonable? I've explained it to you. What more do you want? Do you expect me to not talk to any women in the world for your sake? Every time there's a strange woman near me, you appear as if you have a GPS tracker, wanting to tie me up and take me home. Lin-Cinny, I'm begging you, can you give me some space and freedom? I'm suffocating. Her expression was sorrowful, as if I really was the psychologically twisted control freak he described. I stared at him blankly, my heart aching to the point of numbness. So that's what I am in his heart. I tried my best to suppress the surging emotions and said with difficulty, so you sign it. After the divorce, you will be completely free. Ji-sha opened his mouth as if to say something, but didn't utter a word. After a long while, he gritted his teeth and said, crazy woman, you should calm down. With that, he turned around and slammed the door, leaving. This wasn't the first time Ji-sha and I had argued because of Guan Yi. At first, I didn't know that Ji-sha had such an unforgettable first love like Guan Yi. He only told me that he had only had one relationship that lasted 3 years. At that time, I thought, who doesn't have a few exes in today's society? So my understanding of Guan Yi was limited to the existence of such a person. A year ago, Guan Yi suddenly returned to China. Ji-sha and his brothers threw a welcome party for Guan Yi and invited me to attend. As soon as we entered the door, Guan Yi rushed to Ji-sha and planted a passionate kiss on his face. Ji-sha quickly pushed him away and looked at me nervously. Guan Yi seemed to notice me then and said with a smile, hello, beautiful lady, as he spoke. He hugged me and gave me a kiss as well, only to awkwardly explain afterwards, oops, I'm sorry, I've been abroad for too long. That was a foreign cheek kiss. I hope you two don't mind. Ji-sha quickly smoothed things over and introduced us to each other. This is Guan Yi, an old friend. Then he said to Guan Yi, this is my wife, Lin-Cinny. Although she's a year younger than you still have to call her sister-in-law. I don't know if it was a woman's sixth sense. But the moment I met Guan Yi's eyes, I sensed his hostility. He chuckled and hit Ji-sha. You lucky dog, your sister-in-law is so beautiful. As he said that, he sized me up, his eyes as if he were looking at a selectable item. After everyone arrived, they presented the prepared gifts to Guan Yi. Even with a pink crystal necklace, Guan Yi opened the gift and exclaimed, oh, you still remember I like pink crystals. How rare. Ji-sha smiled, glad you like it. Are you planning to stay in China for development? Guan Yi nodded. Of course, I am a Chinese child, so I must come back to serve the motherland. He returned to participate in a reality workplace show as a challenger. Actually, I was a little unhappy that day. After all, Ji-sha and I had been married for almost 4 years, and he had never prepared any gifts for me. Every time I reminded him, he would just transfer me some money, saying I could buy whatever I needed. It was also from that day on that Guan Yi completely stood between Ji-sha and me. He was like a toad on the instep, not biting, but annoying. He always said ambiguous things and did things that could be explained away. Every time Ji-sha and I argued because of him, Ji-sha could find reasonable excuses to shut me down. I discussed it with my best friend, and she smiled and said, this is a typical combination of a green tea bitch and a white lotus. You can't deal with it. Half a month ago was Guan Yi's birthday. That day, they drank until midnight. I called Ji-sha but no one answered. When I found them, I saw Ji-sha and Guan Yi lying together. Although they were both dressed, Guan Yi was nestled in Ji-sha's arms, clinging to him like a kitten. I went up and slapped Ji-sha, directly pulling the semi-drunk person back to sobriety. The others quickly tried to persuade me. Sister-in-law, what are you doing? Brother Ji just drank a little too much. Let him sleep for a while. Just as he finished speaking, Guan Yi sat up from beside Ji-sha. The others were stunned, not expecting the two to be lying together. Ji-sha, having lost face in front of me, said with a dark face, are you crazy? Didn't I tell you it's Guan Yi's birthday today? What's wrong with drinking a little on your birthday? Guan Yi weakly explained, as if he had really suffered a great grievance. Sister-in-law, Don't misunderstand, Gigi and I are both drunk, we're just dozing off for a while. The others also quickly chimed in. Yeah, sister-in-law, they're both wearing clothes, don't worry, yeah, we're all watching, nothing will happen. Since you're all so generous, then I don't mind finding some young studs for your wives. Hearing this, everyone's expression changed. Linsini, don't go too far. I raised my hand and slapped Jisha again. I'm going too far. If I really went too far, are you sure you could handle it? He didn't say anything, but pulled me home with a cold face. Officially, after my birthday, we were in a cold war until I found out I was pregnant. I wanted to give him a surprise on our anniversary, as a way to give him an out, but he rushed back to pack his things and said he had to go on a business trip. I was disappointed. But I didn't think too much about it until I came across Guan Yi's video and realized he had lied to me. And the thing I hate the most is being deceived. I thought that this time Jisha would wait for me to lower my head and take the initiative to ask him to come back, as he had done before. I didn't expect that this time he would actually take the initiative to make peace. The next morning, when I went downstairs, I saw that Jisha had already prepared breakfast and was waiting for me. When he saw me, he smiled and said, I made your favorite seafood porridge, come and try it. I was stunned for a moment, my mind not quite processing it. This seemed to be the first time Jisha had ever cooked a meal in my memory. Both Jisha and I come from well-to-do families and have always had people to take care of us since we were young. But before we got married, I asked him if he could cook, and he said he could a little, but he didn't like it. So he had never been in the kitchen since we got married. We were going to hire a nanny, but he said he didn't like having strangers in the house, so I was the one who cooked. I spent a long time learning how to cook before I could make dishes that suited his taste, until I saw Guan Yi's video before. I watched all the videos on her homepage, and in several of them, Guan Yi posted a lot of delicious dishes. Fans praised Guan Yi for not only being beautiful but also knowing how to cook. Guan Yi replied that her boyfriend made them, and the fans immediately said they were touched. As for who Guan Yi's boyfriend was, it was self-evident. In those days, every time I saw fans sending their blessings to their relationship, my heart was in agony. Clearly, I am his wife, I should be the one enjoying his favor. I should be the one receiving blessings and praise from everyone alongside him. Yet in the end, I can only hide behind the screen, like a peeping Tom. Watching how affectionate they are and how they receive blessings from everyone, even when he comes to me, takes my hand, sits down at the dining table, his tone unusually gentle. Yi, I've been too busy these past few days and have neglected you a bit. I'll have some time in the next few days. Didn't you say you wanted to see the sunrise from the mountaintop? I'll make some preparations, and we can go together when you have time. I look up at him, finding it all so laughable. Taking another woman to see the golden sunrise, taking his wife to climb a mountain to see the sunrise, and saying it with such condescension, as if his accompanying me would be a great favor. At this moment, I suddenly feel very sad. I don't know if I should be glad that my husband still has me in his heart after cheating, or if I should be angry that he still wants to cover up his infidelity. Meeting his expectant gaze, I say faintly, no need, I've seen it. Even though the smile on his face freezes. How come I didn't know? Of course, he doesn't know. He was probably dreaming sweet dreams with Guan Yi at that time. From the moment I found out, even after he lied to me, I scheduled an abortion, because my constitution is not good. I stayed in the hospital for 2 more days. The night after the surgery, I didn't sleep at all. I watched all of Guan Yi's videos and reflected on my 5-year marriage with Jisha. It wasn't until the rising sun shone on my face through the window that I realized I hadn't slept all night. I got out of bed and walked to the window, watching the sun peeking over the horizon, my cold body gradually warming up. I photographed the sun that morning. I posted it on Moments. During the days you were on a business trip, I was bored, so I went to see it and posted it on Moments. Didn't you see it? Hearing my last sentence, the hand holding his phone suddenly tightened. Even the knuckles turning white from the force. After a long silence, his lips moved, and he said, I'm sorry, I was too busy and didn't see it, but if you still want to see it, I will definitely go with you next time. I chuckled. You said that last time too. If I remember correctly, the time before that as well. Hearing this, Jisha's face gradually turned pale. I wiped my mouth and stood up, looking down at him. Remember, check the weather forecast before climbing a mountain. The next few days will be rainy. With that, I picked up my keys and bag and went out. As I reached the door, I seemed to remember something. Oh right, the divorce agreement is on your desk. I hope you will have signed it by the time I get back from work this afternoon. Leaving these words behind, I left without looking back. After arriving at the company, I finished my work and submitted my resignation. The leader asked me why I was suddenly resigning, and I briefly explained the current situation. The leader approved it readily. He looked at me, hesitated, and finally said only one sentence: "If you need my help, you can call me anytime." I was slightly stunned. I didn't expect that the always strict and rigid leader would say such caring words to his subordinates. I smiled, said thank you, and turned to leave. After leaving the company, I went to see the lawyer again. Because of Guan Yi's understanding, he shouldn't sign so readily. So I have to make more preparations to ensure that I can get rid of this rotten marriage. When I returned home in the afternoon, I found that Jisha was not only at home, but Guan Yi was also there. Seeing me come back, the two quickly stood up. I frowned and looked at Guan Yi. "Why are you here?" Guan Yi cautiously looked at Jisha and then at me. He bowed deeply to me. "Shin Yi, I'm sorry. I apologize to you. Before, when I was in contact with Jisha, I didn't grasp the proper boundaries. So I made you misunderstand. Jisha asked me to come here today because she wanted to explain to you that we are just ordinary friends, and I hope you don't impulsively file for divorce because of a misunderstanding. I'm really sorry." His hands were tightly clenched, and his face was tense, as if he was really afraid that our relationship would be affected because of him. Jisha took a step forward, staring at me intently. "Shin Yi, you see, Guan Yi and I really have nothing, so please don't talk about divorce anymore, okay?" I shifted my gaze to Guan Yi behind him, saw the sinister and resentful look in his eyes, and smiled. Suddenly, I really wanted to tease the two of them. "Really?" Jisha nodded emphatically. "Of course, Guan Yi and I are really just friends." For every word Jisha said, Guan Yi's face turned darker. I pretended to think. "Let me think about it. Let him go back first." Yes, you go back quickly." Jisha issued an eviction order, and Guan Yi left with a dark face. "Shin Yi, you see, I've explained it to you and him. I really don't have anything with him. Can you not mention divorce?" I nodded. "Yes. You delete his friend, block all his contact information, and don't see him for a week, and I'll consider not getting a divorce." He was stunned for a moment. "Wouldn't that be bad, if it gets out? It will affect your reputation." I chuckled. "Then let's get a divorce. It won't affect me after the divorce." Jisha quickly shook his head. "Okay, I'll listen to you." He took out his phone, deleted Guan Yi's friend, and blocked all his contact information. "Shin Yi, look." Jisha shook his phone at me. "I promise I definitely won't see him in the next week." I smiled and didn't speak. It's too early to promise now, and I don't believe Jisha's words anymore. From that day on, Jisha seemed to have returned to the years before Guan Yi came back. On the first day, he came home on time and made me my favorite dishes. On the second day, he took me to do clay sculptures. On the third day, he hired a photographer to take artistic photos of me. On the fourth, fifth, and sixth days, he took time off to take me to see Rizhao Jinshan. After seeing it, I felt like it was just SOSO. On the last day, Jisha went out after breakfast, taking advantage of the time. I made an appointment with Guan Yi. Guan Yi must have rushed over without sleeping, and the makeup on his face was smudged. Guan Yi originally had a good job, but since he found that working his ass off was not as profitable as being a blogger, he simply quit his job to become a streamer. But after quitting, he found that being a blogger was not easy. He looks okay, plus beauty filters, and he can still compete in the appearance track. Just got off the air. "The makeup is all gone," he choked, and said with a stiff neck. "What do you want me for? Jisha is no longer contacting me or seeing me. Are you satisfied?" I raised my eyes to look at him and directly splashed the coffee in my hand on his face. "Ah!" Guan Yi screamed. "What are you doing? Are you crazy?" I took out a tissue and slowly wiped my fingers, not hurried or slow, and said, "You should know what you did." Shouldn't I splash you? Guan Yi was stunned for a moment, then laughed. You know everything. I nodded lightly. Traveling together, staying in the same room, and even specifically buying recommendations for our city, isn't it just for me to see? That's right, it's for you to see. Are you happy now that you see it? I nodded. Not bad, you are very smart, but unfortunately, you didn't use your smarts in the right place. He looked terrified and asked me in a trembling voice, what do you mean? Seeing his fear, a sense of pleasure rose in my heart. I've checked you out, you studied abroad for 4 years. That degree is fake, isn't it? And there's a lot of explosive news. I know what you want to do. Guan Yi's face was pale. If you want me to leave Jisha, I can leave. No, don't leave me. I rested my chin and smiled casually. I won't expose you. I did think about dealing with you before. But then I thought about it and it wasn't necessary. If he really wants to cheat, even without you, he will cheat with someone else. So I won't stop a piece of trash from leaving me. I filed for divorce. But he didn't agree. I said that if I don't contact you or see you within a week, I will consider not getting a divorce. Today is the last day. I really want to know if you have the ability to break his promise. Guan Yi frowned at me and then laughed. Then let's try and see, he said domineeringly. He got up and left. At 6 o'clock in the afternoon, Jisha arrived home on time. He brought a professional styling team back and said with a smile, I have prepared a surprise for you today. Let me dress you up now. I nodded and sat obediently in front of the makeup mirror, enjoying the services of everyone. Later, someone changed me into a dark blue evening dress. I looked at myself in the mirror. It seemed like I hadn't seen myself so beautiful in a long time. Even Jisha looked amazed when he saw me. Cinny, you look so beautiful today. He stepped forward and offered his hand to help me downstairs. Jisha took me to the most luxurious sky restaurant in the city. Sitting here, you can overlook the night view of the entire city. He looked at me and smiled and said, remember, we were here on our first wedding anniversary. That day, you complained to me about how much time and effort you spent to get this place. Of course I remember. Because I loved him at that time and valued every moment I spent with him. So, in order to leave a perfect memory, I booked the entire venue that day. The restaurant cost hundreds of thousands to decorate and also hired violin and piano players. But now, apart from the same place, nothing else can compare. I looked at the man opposite me. He clearly had the same eyebrows and eyes, and the surroundings were the same as before. But the feeling he gave me was no longer the same as before. I didn't know if he had changed or if I had changed. In short, we were no longer the same. While I was lost in memories and contemplation, his phone rang. It was a strange number. He frowned, glanced at it, and hung up directly. But the other party called again, persistent, as if they would keep calling forever if he didn't answer. Jisha glanced at me, and I nodded and stammered, maybe it's something important. The phone connected. And it was an unfamiliar man with an unkind tone, asking if you were Jisha and whether you knew Guan Yi. Just as he was about to speak, he heard the man say that Guan Yi was in his hands and to immediately prepare 5 million in unmarked cash, not to call the police, and to deliver it alone, or else he could wait to collect the body. Hearing this, he panicked, jumped up, and quickly tried to soothe the man, telling him not to be impulsive and not to hurt Guan Yi, promising to give him the money as long as he didn't hurt him. I sat across from him, hearing their conversation clearly and taking in his panicked expression. Having known him for 7 years and been married for 5, I had never seen Jisha so flustered and nervous. Even his speech became incoherent. He hung up the phone and turned to leave. At this moment, I stopped him, asking if he was leaving. He looked back at me with a pained yet resolute expression, saying that he believed I had heard everything and that he had to go. That Guan Yi couldn't be in trouble. I asked what if it was fake. He paused, his gaze complex, and said that he remembered me as a very kind person and couldn't believe I would say such a thing. That Guan Yi was in danger and it was a matter of life and death, so he had to go. He promised to come back to me once Guan Yi was safe. He spoke the last 3 words, believe me, with righteousness, as if he truly was a savior. I nodded, watched him leave, and after finishing that dinner alone, I went home. Jisha didn't come home that night. In the early hours of the morning, I received a message from Guan Yi. announcing that the outcome was decided. Below was a photo of her lying on Jisha's chest, kissing him, with a dim background and an atmosphere full of ambiguity. I smiled, watching her send taunting and gloating messages, and the corners of my mouth involuntarily turned up. I, Lin Xinyi, have lived for over 20 years and have never lost. I saved and packaged all the evidence and sent it to the lawyer, followed by a message saying, "It's okay now." The lawyer replied with an immediate okay. The next morning, I went straight to the airport with my suitcase. My happy life was finally here. As soon as the plane landed, I turned on my phone and saw nothing but instant calls and messages. "Wife, where are you? Wife, I was wrong, I shouldn't have left. Please answer my phone." "Okay, wife, where did your things go, wife?" I didn't know he was lying to me. I really didn't know. "Please come back." "Okay." He babbled on and on. I glanced at it and chose to delete it with one click, and by the way blacklisted him and all the contacts of people around him. A week later, I received a message from the lawyer saying that mediation had been rejected and it would take some time for the case to be filed. I replied, "Okay, after the case is successfully filed, please urge the court hearing and open the court as soon as possible." That day, I saw Guan Yi's message again. "You filed for divorce." Seeing his message, I was still a little surprised. After all, I thought that as long as I wasn't there, they should be together smoothly. But now Guan Yi's tone doesn't sound like it went smoothly. "Yes, I started preparing from the day I filed for divorce." After the message was sent, Guan Yi replied in seconds, "Are you deliberately playing with us?" "Yes." "So what? If it weren't for your help, I wouldn't have been able to get away so smoothly." After replying to this message, I also blacklisted Guan Yi. I found Guan Yi's previous revelations and sent them to a certain marketing account. The other party asked me how much money I wanted. I smiled and replied, "Free." But I stipulated the time, which was to be revealed on the day my case was successfully filed and the court opened. Half a month later, the lawyer told me that the case had been successfully filed and the court would open in 5 days. I synchronized the time with the marketing account and waited for the good show to begin. After playing abroad for more than a month, I thought it was time to get down to business. I contacted several hospitals to learn about artificial insemination. Finally, after many choices, I chose sperm from someone with a good education, appearance, health, no genetic diseases, and no genetic problems, and had the surgery. A few days later, the lawyer synchronized the information to me, saying that the court would open tomorrow. I was abroad and the time difference was perfect to see what was happening in China. After 12:01 that night, the revelations about Guan Yi came out. Academic fraud, being a mistress, and a chaotic private life. Any one of these would be enough to completely end his career as a big internet celebrity. Even the production team that had previously invited Guan Yi to participate in variety shows quickly came out to apologize, explaining that they would definitely select candidates more strictly in the future to ensure that such things would not happen again. And all the loving moments that Guan Yi and Jisha had posted in their previous videos became evidence that he was a mistress, scaring him to hide all the videos overnight and set his account to private. But he had a lot of fans. And some fans still kept his videos. In particular, the CP fans of the two were completely broken, and they directly began to analyze the situation of the two frame by frame. Finding all the common scenes of the two together, netizens found the timer's account and frantically hurled insults. Some netizens discovered that today was the day the timer was in court, and they went in to listen and found out he was in a divorce lawsuit. This news immediately sent the two of them to the top of the trending searches again. Everyone felt sorry for me, the original wife, and some netizens felt sorry for me and asked about my whereabouts. I looked at the constantly refreshing comments and couldn't help but laugh. Even he contacted me like crazy. Now he must know that I did all of this, but unfortunately, he won't find me. My mother called me when she heard the news, and I briefly explained the situation. Saying that I was relaxing abroad, my mother sighed and said, "Then have fun and relax, it's good for you." Indeed, I traveled around the world for more than a month, and later found a hospital in the empire to have the surgery, but I didn't tell my mother about this. After the court session, the lawyer messaged me. saying that the technician refused the divorce, insisting that there were still feelings between us. I knew that in this situation, the judge usually wouldn't grant a divorce. So I didn't even think I could get divorced in one go. I told the lawyer that we could sue again in 6 months and that it would be tough on him then. After he turned off his phone, I planned the next steps. The technician should be able to find me in 6 months. But that's okay, I found something for him to do. I also asked a friend to make some trouble for the technician's company. I believe he won't be able to solve the surgery's success for a while. Before I was a few months pregnant, I was still running around the world. Only after I had enough fun did I return to the empire to have my baby in peace. When I was 7 months pregnant, the second court session began, and this time I successfully divorced the lawyer. When the lawyer sent the message, I smiled with satisfaction. Now it's time to go back. When I appeared in front of everyone with my pregnant belly, they all looked shocked. In just over half a year, he seemed to have aged a lot, haggard and exhausted, with no light in his eyes, as if his vitality had been sucked away. Only after returning did I learn that after Guan Yu was exposed, he became a rat that everyone wanted to beat. Although Jisha wasn't much better, he was, after all, someone with status. So the impact on him wasn't as great as on Guan Yi, but Guan Yi completely latched onto Jisha, even going to Jisha's company to make a scene twice. Climbing to the top of the building and threatening to jump. Basically, he did whatever he could to provoke people. Even if he didn't want to get involved, Guan Yu would call the police every time things escalated, and the police would contact Jisha, leaving him with no choice but to go. I regret it so much. If I had known how exciting things were in China, I would have come back sooner. After the initial expose, I stopped paying attention to them and missed out on the first wave of juicy gossip, which is a real shame. The day after I got back, I took the divorce decree stamped by the court to the Civil Affairs Bureau and got my divorce certificate. Stepping out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, Jisha called out to me in time, "Shin Yi." I stopped and looked at him. "What's wrong? Is there something else?" He tried to tug at the corners of his mouth, revealing a bitter smile. After a long silence, he spoke with difficulty. "I'm sorry," I scoffed. "You really know how to put on an act. I really underestimated you before." He quickly defended himself. "No, I really have nothing to do with him. The person I love has always been you. I didn't want to pay him any more attention." But seeing him still putting on this hypocritical act even now, I couldn't help but want to curse him. "Even if I really can't understand your love, you say you love me. But you argue with me for other women every time. Which time wasn't it me who took the initiative to lower my head and apologize to you? You say you love me, but you took Guan Yi on a trip and even stayed in the same room. Most importantly, you say you love me, but I've never felt your love. Love isn't just words. If I don't feel it, then it doesn't exist." With each word I spoke, Jisha's face turned paler. By the end, his body was swaying, a little unsteady on his feet. His lips moved for a long time, wanting to say something, but he couldn't utter a single word. Finally, he focused his gaze on my stomach, taking a deep breath as if using his last strength. "Is this child mine?" Hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh, laughing until tears came out of my eyes. Laughing until Jisha panicked. "Don't you know? Didn't you read the divorce agreement I left you?" He was stunned for a moment, then nodded blankly. "Go back and take a look. You'll know when you see it." With that, I left without looking back. That night, Jisha rushed to my house, banging on the door like crazy. He shouted, "Shin Yi, Lin Shin Yi, come out, tell me that the list under the divorce agreement is fake." "It's fake, right?" I was separated from him by a door, looking at him expressionlessly through the open work gap. "Even if you still don't want to admit your mistakes and face reality, then you are really hopeless. You are not worthy of wasting my time. Leave." The originally irritable and shouting Jisha gradually quieted down after hearing what I said. He seemed to have been drained of all his strength, and slumped at my door. "How could this be? How could this be?" He kept murmuring that this was not true, that he didn't believe it, even though we have been married for 5 years. "You should know a little bit about what kind of person I am. We can have quarrels and conflicts, but I can't stand deception. When you lied to me and took her on a trip in the name of a business trip, to see the sunrise, we could never go back. You probably haven't seen his account, have you? He has posted all the bits and pieces of your love. The seemingly normal interaction between you is, in my opinion, evidence of betrayal. If you don't believe me, you can go to the hospital to check, or you can look at your former lover's phone and see how many secrets you don't know." After saying that, I turned and left Jisha, who was crying loudly outside the door. After that, I never saw Jisha again. I heard that he went back to find Guanyi, and I don't know what happened between them, but they made up as before. Facing the abuse from netizens, he chose to ignore it, and he was very fond of Guanyi. Like a lost treasure that had been found, he protected Guanyi very well, and told everyone that Guanyi was now his woman. I wasn't surprised by this outcome at all. Back when Guanyi had just resigned and was preparing to become a full-time blogger, Jisha helped him a lot. He helped him build a team, find people for collaborations, and even gave Guanyi product promotions that he had worked on many times directly. I only found out about these things later. During those 7 days when I asked Jisha to block and delete Guanyi was like a crazy person breaking down and exploding, besides posting abusive words every day. All that was left was showing off his contributions, what he did for him, how much he gave. Guanyi told me all of this, and I am very grateful to him. His messages became my evidence. Later, I packed all of these things and sent them to Jisha, telling him to treat Guanyi well, so that all of the sacrifices wouldn't be in vain. A little over 2 months later, I gave birth to a blonde-haired, blue-eyed daughter, very beautiful. Many people came that day to send their blessings. My parents were originally unhappy when they learned of my actions, but now seeing such a beautiful little granddaughter, the old couple's hearts melted instantly. After my friends gradually left, I noticed that there seemed to be someone still standing at the door. I turned around and saw it was Jisha. He seemed to have lost weight again. The flesh on his cheeks was gone, his eye sockets were sunken, and his eyes were full of bloodshot. When I saw him, my heart trembled subconsciously. I was afraid he would mutate the next second and pounce on me to bite me. Jisha seemed to notice my tension and suspicion. The smile on his face froze, replaced by disappointment and sadness. "Don't be nervous, I just came to see you and the baby." He was holding a bouquet of baby's breath flowers and a gourmet fruit basket. I glanced at him and said, "Leave, I don't need your concern." He opened his mouth, his voice hoarse, and said, "I beg you, can I just take one look at the baby?" Just then, my parents came back holding the baby after the checkup. Their faces changed when they saw Jisha. "What are you doing here? You are not welcome here. Please leave immediately." My father sternly issued the order to leave. Jisha looked at me sadly, then pleaded to my parents, "Mom and Dad, I beg you. Can I just take one look at the baby? I'll just look from afar." As he spoke, he took a step back and raised his hands above his head to show his attitude. My parents looked at me, asking for my attitude. I just wanted him to leave quickly. If he could leave after seeing the baby, then let him see it. I nodded slightly, and my parents understood what I meant. My father stood in front of my mother and the baby, and my mother held the baby behind my father, even though he could only see the child in my mother's arms from behind my father's shoulders. He suddenly smiled, a satisfied, happy, and blissful smile, so well-behaved and cute. He subconsciously reached out to the child, but my father immediately pushed him away, and he was caught off guard and fell to the ground. After regaining his senses, he quickly apologized. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean any harm. I'll get out of here. I'll leave before you get someone to beat me up," my father said fiercely, protecting my mother and the child into the house, then locked the door, and Jisha left. From that day on, I never saw Jisha again. The next time I heard about him, it was on a public notice about him being involved in group licentiousness and intentional injury. Later, I learned from someone in the know how crazy Jisha was. After he was with Guanyi, he would drug Guanyi every night, and then find different men to humiliate Guanyi. Guanyi didn't know at first, but soon after, she became pregnant. However, before she could be happy for long, she had a miscarriage. The doctor told her that she was newly pregnant, the fetus was unstable, and she couldn't have marital relations. Jisha initially apologized to Guanyi, saying it was all his fault, that he couldn't help himself. Not long after, Guan Yi became pregnant again, and then miscarried again. Still the same reason. Guan Yi was a little scared and begged Ji Shi not to touch her after she suspected she was pregnant. In less than a year, Guan Yi had 3 pregnancies and miscarriages. Until the 4th time, Guan Yi sensed something was wrong and became scared, but Ji Shi directly tied her up and found someone to insult her while she was conscious. She cried and asked why. Ji Shi said expressionlessly, "You caused me and Cinny to lose our child, of course I have to return it. The things in your stomach were all mongrels anyway, it's no big deal if they're gone." After the 4th pregnancy, Ji Shi completely stopped pretending. He would beat Guan Yi for no reason. One time, he was drunk and beat Guan Yi so badly that she had a massive hemorrhage. If the nanny hadn't called 120 in time, Guan Yi might have died. Guan Yi took this opportunity to call the police and accused Ji Shi of what he had done. After investigation, Guan Yi's words were all true. The final result was that Ji Shi was sentenced to 9 years, and he admitted it, and Guan Yi didn't fare much better. Multiple pregnancies and miscarriages in a short period of time led to cervical cancer, and her uterus was removed. She can't have her own children for the rest of her life. Most importantly, she contracted AIDS, which is really terrifying. After that, Guan Yi disappeared. After the incident was exposed, some said it was a deserved punishment, and some said it didn't warrant such a harsh outcome. Anyway, I never thought things would turn out this way, but it has nothing to do with me now. I have my own life and children, and every day is fulfilling. If I have someone I like in the future, I don't mind having a few more relationships. As for marriage, once is enough. In an extra episode, when Cinny mentioned divorce, I panicked because he never joked about such things. I knew he must have been wronged or found something out. My instinctive explanations and justifications didn't earn his forgiveness, and even bringing Guan Yi to plead for me seemed to be in vain. He said he would consider not divorcing if I didn't contact Guan Yi for a week. It sounded simple, but I felt it wasn't. I was nervous every day that week. I strictly warned myself not to interfere with Guan Yi's affairs, but when I received the kidnapper's call, I panicked. I was really afraid someone would die. If something really happened to him, as the last person to receive the call, I would definitely be involved. I wanted to tell Cinny that once this matter was resolved, we wouldn't have any future worries. But when I found Guan Yi, I realized I had been tricked. He used something to inject me, and I gradually lost consciousness. When I woke up the next day, I found Cinny was gone. I searched for him at home, around the company, and among all the people I knew. I frantically called him, sent messages explaining and apologizing, but got no response. I checked his spending information and learned that he had gone abroad. I wanted to go find him, but suddenly something happened at the company. A company we had been cooperating with suddenly said they wanted to end the partnership and find another, and a manufacturer we had worked with for many years also suddenly said they had a better partner and wanted to reconsider the collaboration. Things happened so suddenly that I was completely unprepared. I was busy for several days. When I finished dealing with the issues, I received a call from the mediator saying that Cinny was suing me for divorce. I panicked and rushed over. But I didn't see him. His lawyer said that Cinny had entrusted all divorce matters to him. I asked where he was, and he said he didn't know, that this was what Cinny had agreed with him before, and now he couldn't contact Cinny either. Faced with this result, I felt powerless and helpless. After understanding the situation, I asked the lawyer if it was possible to avoid a divorce. The lawyer said no. Cinny's attitude toward divorce was firm, and he wouldn't accept mediation. In other words, today's mediation was just a formality. If mediation failed, a lawsuit would be filed. No matter what I said, the lawyer wouldn't budge, and the result was as he wished. The lawsuit was filed. In the 20 or so days that followed, I wanted to find him, but faced with the impending divorce lawsuit, I had to seek help from a lawyer. After the first failed divorce attempt, I had 6 months to find him, but I searched for a long time without success. He was constantly running. Without any logic or pattern, I searched for 3 months and confirmed that he had gone back in time during the Empire era, but when I went there, he wasn't there either. He had run again. There were still many troubles with the domestic company, and then there was a second lawsuit. I had no choice but to return home. After the second hearing, I had no reason to delay, and we got divorced. At the moment the verdict was handed down, I felt like the sky was falling. And the blood in my whole body was cooling down inch by inch. Later, he came back, and I finally learned the whole truth. It turned out that he had directly aborted our child because I favored Guanyi and took Guanyi on a trip. I was devastated. I was really going crazy. I went home to confirm the date of the abortion, which was the day after I took Guanyi on a trip, and he had previously said that he saw the sunrise and posted it on Moments. The caption of that post was only 2 words. Heartfelt. It turned out that from that time on, he was preparing for a divorce and had already decided he didn't want me anymore, so everything that followed was just a means for him to play with me. I found Guanyi and asked him why he lied to me that day. He smiled and said it was all Shin-yi's idea, that Shin-yi had found him and asked him to leave me that day. It dawned on me that the 7 days he gave me were just an illusory game. After my affair with Guanyi was exposed, I looked at his phone and realized that Guanyi had done so many disgusting things behind my back. He filmed our interactions, not recording or only showing half of my face. Behind my back, he provoked and insulted Shin-yi. He even deliberately used the incident on his birthday, 2 days before our anniversary, to beg me, saying he was wronged, and begging me to take him on a trip. All of this was planned by him. In that case, I will fulfill his wish to be with me. The suffering Shin-yi and I endured, the loss of our child, the loss of our marriage, I will get all of this back from Guanyi. I designed step by step, retaliated bit by bit. I succeeded, but I was not happy. Guanyi and I both had a bad end. And I don't regret it, even with the current ending. In those years in prison, whenever I think of the child's face, I feel that it was all worth it. It's just a pity that I ultimately let down Shin-yi and my unborn child. I hope that in the next life, heaven can give me a chance to make amends. Well, that's all for today's story. If you like this video, please subscribe. We will continue to update more exciting stories and look forward to seeing you next time.